Hi guys, tonight we're stepping quietly into the deep past, into a world before cities, before farms, before anyone had the cheerful inconvenience of alarm clocks, tax forms, or a phone glowing beside the pillow at 2 a.m. The air is cool, the ground is dark, and a small fire breathes in front of you, its orange light trembling against a shelter of branches, grass, and hide. You smell smoke, damp earth, and the faint animal musk carried on the night wind. Somewhere beyond the firelight, insects rasp softly, and a distant night bird calls once, then thinks better of it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and as you settle in, tell us in the comments where you are watching from and what your local time is. It is lovely to imagine this story drifting across bedrooms around the world. Now, dim the lights and let the room around you soften, because the place you are entering is older than memory. You're standing perhaps 100,000 years before your own morning, in a stretch of time when Homo sapiens already walk the earth. But the familiar shape of civilization is nowhere to be found. There are no roads, no temples, no written names carved into stone. There is no king sleeping under embroidered blankets, no market opening at sunrise, no little shop selling snacks with suspiciously modern prices. There are only people, weather, hunger, fire, and the long practice of staying alive. The larger world is colder and more changeable than the one you know. Ice grows and retreats far away, sea levels rise and fall, grasslands expand, forests shrink, then return in patient waves. Many early humans live in small, mobile bands, moving when food, water, or season asks them to move. A mainstream historical fact sits quietly beneath this scene by about 100,000 years ago. Anatomically modern humans had already emerged in Africa, carrying bodies and brains much like yours. That is a simple statement, but in the darkness beside this fire, it feels enormous. You lower yourself near the edge of the camp, careful not to disturb anything, though of course nobody can truly see you. A sleeper turned under an animal's skin. Another person lies curled close to the embers, one arm tucked beneath their head. The shelter is not grand, but it works. Branches lean together, grass and hides block the wind, stones sit around the fire to hold heat, and the ash glows in soft red pockets, like sleepy eyes refusing to close. You notice the tools first because they are near the fire, arranged not neatly by modern standards, but with practical memory. Stone flakes, a larger core, scraping tools, sharpened points, pieces of bone. A hide partly worked smooth. Nothing here is random. Everything has been touched, chosen, used, and set aside for another dawn. Each object carries angles, pressure, patience, and the mildly annoying habit of stone to break the wrong way. The people here do not live in a crude, empty world. Their world is full. It is full of landmarks, animal paths, edible roots, dangerous plants, reliable water, useful stones, family ties, old stories, and remembered places where someone once found shelter during a storm. You might not see a map, but the map is carried in bodies, in gestures, in the way an older person points toward the dark ridge and a younger person understands. A small sound comes from the edge of camp. Someone wakes just enough to lift their head and listen. You listen too. The night has layers. The nearby fire snaps softly. Farther out, grass whispers. Farther still, an animal moves. Heavy enough to bend brush, but not close enough to alarm anyone. The waking person waits, steady and still. Then the sound passes away into the dark. Their head lowers again. The camp resumes its breathing. Researchers continue to question exactly when the human mind became recognizably modern, not in body alone, but in imagination, language, symbolism, and shared meaning. Some evidence appears earlier, some later, and the old story of a sudden human awakening has become less tidy than it once seemed. Scholars are fond of making things less tidy. It is part of the job description, apparently. But here, beside this veil, you do not need a perfect line on a chart. You can feel the question breathing in the night. When did humans become truly human? Was it one moment, or was it a long dawn? You look at the faces around the fire, in sleep. They seem both distant and familiar. A brow relaxes, fingers twitch. Someone murmurs in a dream. The sound is not a word you understand, yet it carries feeling. Maybe warning, maybe memory, maybe just the ancient version of dreaming about arriving without the correct footwear. A quirky, lesser-known tidbit belongs here, small as a bead in the dust. Archaeologists have found evidence that early humans used red ochre tens of thousands of years before farming or writing, sometimes grinding it into powder, perhaps for body painting, hide working, symbolic marking, or all of these at once. Imagine that. Before pottery, before bread, before bedtime history channels, someone cared enough about colour to carry earth that stained the fingers red. You lean closer to the fire, and warmth reaches your face while the back of your neck remains cool. Fire does more than cook food. It gathers people into a circle. It pushes darkness back just far enough for faces to appear. It lengthens the day into story time, planning time, repair time, teaching time. Around fire, a group can look at one another for hours, and that is no small thing. Faces become familiar. Expressions become readable. The mind begins to live not only inside one skull, but between many. This is where the deep past becomes unexpectedly gentle. To become truly human may not mean inventing one brilliant thing. It may mean 100 quieter things joining together. A tool kept for tomorrow, a colour carried from far away, a child comforted, a warning remembered, a fire fed through the night because morning is easier when embers remain. You sit with them in the last stretch before dawn. The flames are lower now, the air has grown colder. Ash settles softly around blackened wood. One person wakes enough to nudge a branch inward, and sparks lift in a tiny golden swirl before fading. No one applauds this act. No one writes it down. Yet the whole group benefits. Tomorrow begins because someone, half asleep and probably not thrilled about it, keeps the fire alive. And there it is. The first quiet step in your journey. Not a trumpet blast, not a sudden leap from animal to angel. Just breath in cold air, fingers near warmth, eyes opening in darkness, and minds already woven together by need, memory, and care. You remain beside the shelter as the eastern edge of the world begins to pale. The people are still sleeping, but the fire is waiting, and so are you. The first light arrives slowly, as if the sky itself is still half asleep. You watch the darkness thin above the low ridge, not with a burst of gold, but with a careful greyness that touches the stones, the brush, the sleeping shoulders beneath hide coverings. The fire is no longer a bright creature. It has settled into a red heart under ash, warm but quiet, and a thin thread of smoke slips upward into the cold morning air. You remain with the band as the world around them begins to show its shape. This is not a world with roads. There are no fences, no mile markers, no signposts leaning politely at crossroads, announcing the next village and perhaps a charming little cafe with questionable seating. There is only land, and the land must be read. Before you walk farther, it helps to understand the wider world beneath your feet. Around 100,000 years ago, Earth is moving through the rhythms of the Ice Age. Though not every place is buried under ice, climate changes in long, uneven pulses in some regions. Grassland spreads wide under pale skies. In others, woodland shelters animals, birds, insects, and the human groups who know how to follow them. Sea levels are often lower during colder periods because so much water is locked away in ice. changing coastlines and opening routes that later generations will never see. A mainstream historical fact guides this morning. Early Homo sapiens lived as hunter-gatherers, moving through landscapes according to the availability of food, fresh water, raw materials, and seasonal change. Their lives were not aimless wandering. That modern phrase, wandering around, sounds rather like someone who has misplaced their keys. These people are not lost. They are following knowledge. You step beyond the camp as the first adults begin to wake. The ground is cool through your imagined feet. Fine dust clings to damp patches, grass brushes your legs. A few hardy shrubs hold beads of dew, each one catching the weak light for a moment before it disappears. In the distance, low hills fold into one another, and beyond them lie places known not by names written down, but by memory, story, and repeated travel. A woman rises from beside the fire and stretches her back. Another person checks the embers. Someone else looks toward the slope where animals may pass later in the day. Their movements are slow, economical, and familiar. They are not beginning a workday in the modern sense. No one is clocking in. No one is wondering whether an email marked urgent is actually urgent, which, as history teaches us, it usually is not. But there is work all the same, and it begins with attention. You follow? As a few members of the group walk outward from the shelter. They do not march, they drift with purpose, or one pauses near a patch of disturbed soil. Another scans the ground for prints. A younger person watches an older one closely, trying to learn what matters: a bent stem, a broken twig, droppings dried at the edge, the faint track of hooves where animals passed in the night. The land is full of messages, but none of them announce themselves. You must know the difference between a mark made yesterday and one made many days ago. You must understand where water lies after rain, where shade remains in heat, where edible tubers hide under ordinary-looking leaves. You must remember which valley held game last season, and which place became dangerous after a dry spell. In this world, memory is not decoration, memory is survival. Researchers remain divided on how much long-distance planning early humans practiced at this stage, and how far ahead they imagined future routes. Seasonal returns, or exchanges with other groups. Some evidence suggests impressive planning very deep in time, while other scholars caution that we should not project too much modern behaviour backward. The debate is gentle but persistent, like a small academic fire that refuses to go out. As you walk, the morning grows warmer. The smell of the camp fades behind you, replaced by crushed grass, mineral dust, and the faint sweetness of flowering plants tucked low to the ground. A bird lifts from a bush, wings flickering pale in the light. Far off, something calls with a rough, barking note. Everyone pauses, not afraid, exactly. Listening. Always listening. There is a quiet dignity in the way these people move through uncertainty. The world does not promise them breakfast, it does not offer storage cupboards, delivery options, or a refrigerator humming in the corner like a very boring household spirit. Food is found by remembering patterns and by accepting that nature is generous on some days and deeply unhelpful on others. You notice that the group does not travel randomly across open ground. They use edges. They follow the line where scrub meets grassland, where animals also pass. They keep ridges in sight. They move near dry stream beds that may lead toward water after rain. Their route is shaped by experience passed from person to person. If one mind forgets, another may remember. If one pair of eyes misses a clue, another may catch it. A lesser-known historical tidbit rests in this kind of movement. Archaeologists sometimes trace ancient mobility through the stone itself. Tools made from a particular type of rock can be found far from the place where that rock naturally occurs, suggesting that people carried materials with them, returned to known sources, or exchanged objects across distances. A stone flake can become a tiny travel diary, though admittedly one with terrible handwriting. You reach a rise where the land opens. The sun now sits low and pale, warming the shoulders of the walkers below. A shallow valley curls between patches of green and brown. There may be water there, hidden beneath reeds. There may be animal tracks in the mud. There may also be nothing useful at all, because the past, like the present, has a sense of humour. An older member of the group gestures toward the valley, then toward another line of trees farther away. The gesture is brief, but others understand. Perhaps the nearer water is worth checking first. Perhaps the distant grove holds fruit or nuts in this season. Perhaps there is a place where useful stone can be found. You cannot hear the full conversation, and maybe much of it happens without words, in glances and small motions. Still, meaning travels. This is one of the soft miracles of humanity before civilization. No road lies underfoot, yet roots exist. No calendar hangs on a wall, yet seasons are known. No written map is folded in a leather pouch, yet the world has structure. The band carries geography inside itself. Hills, winds, stars, smells, animal paths, old campsites, and dangerous crossings live in the shared mind of the group. You look back toward the camp, now small in the distance. Smoke rises in a thin blue line, almost invisible against the brightening air. That smoke is a marker too, a sign of warmth, people, and return. For now. You continue forward through a world that is not empty, not primitive in the careless sense, but densely known. Every step asks a question, every answer is stored in memory. And as the morning settles around you, you begin to understand that becoming human is also becoming a traveller through meaning. A footprint is not just a footprint. A cloud is not just a cloud. A bend in the valley is not just land. Everything may matter. And because everything may matter, the mind becomes awake to the world in a new way. The group descends gently toward the reeds. The air smells cooler there, damp and green. Insects hum in the light. Someone kneels to touch the mud. Someone else watches the far slope. You stand with them in the pause before the day decides what it will offer. The pause beside the reeds does not last long. Morning has a way of asking people to move along, politely at first. Then with the firm patience of an old teacher, the damp ground gives off a cool, green smell. And the mud near the water holds fresh impressions from animals that passed before dawn. The older walker studies them for a moment, then straightens. A few quiet gestures pass between the adults, and the group turns back toward camp, carrying the day's first information like an invisible basket. As you return, the smoke line rises more clearly above the shelter. The camp is awake now, though awake in this world does not mean cheerful conversation and someone loudly asking where the good cup has gone. It is quieter than that. People rise in layers. First a shoulder shifts, then a hand appears from beneath a hide, then someone sits, blinking into light, hair tangled, face creased by sleep, looking for a moment very much like any human who has ever regretted mourning. The historical background here is simple but important. Small hunter-gatherer bands in the deep past likely depended on close cooperation. They shared tasks, watched children, prepared food, maintained tools, and made decisions based on age, skill, kinship, and experience. There were no formal offices, no written laws, no public notice boards informing everyone that the meeting has been moved to Tuesday, yet social life was structured, because survival required it. A mainstream historical fact belongs near this waking camp. Early human groups were generally small and mobile, often made up of extended kin and trusted companions who cooperated in gathering, hunting, childcare, and defense. The exact size of such groups varied. An archaeologist cannot simply count sleepers around a 100,000-year-old fire. Conveniently, the past did not leave a guest list. But the evidence of campsites, tools, hearths, and later hunter-gatherer comparisons suggests a world of close bonds rather than isolated individuals. You watch a child crawl from beneath a covering and sit near the ash, rubbing both eyes with small fists. Another child, older and already more alert, picks up a rounded stone, then puts it down after a glance from an adult. Not that one, not there. Even correction is quiet here. A lesson passes without fuss. Someone feeds the fire. Dry twigs catch first, bending into flame with tiny crackling sounds. Smoke thickens, and the morning smell changes. Damp earth gives way to burning wood, old ash, warm hide, and the faint scent of food from the night before. The firelight is weak in daylight, but its heat gathers people anyway. A person extends stiff fingers toward it. Another turns a piece of hide inside out to inspect it. Someone shakes dust from a woven bundle of plant fibers. You notice how little is wasted. A broken point is not simply trash. It may be sharpened again, turned into another tool, or remembered as a warning about the stone. A hide scraped yesterday still needs softening. A bone can become a point, a tool, or a teaching object in the hands of someone patient. Even the ash has uses. It can preserve embers, repel insects, clean, dry, and bark. The ancient household, if you can call this loose circle of shelter and fire a household, runs on attention. Scholars still debate how division of labour worked in early Homo sapiens groups, especially how tasks were shared by age, sex, skill, season, and circumstance. Some argue that patterns were flexible and practical, while others suggest certain roles may have become customary to many groups. The safest thing to say, and perhaps the most human, is that everyone here contributes in ways shaped by ability, experience, and need. You sit near the fire and listen. There are voices now, low and rough with sleep. They rise and fall in short phrases, mixed with gestures, glances, and little sounds that might carry meanings you cannot reach. Language at this time is difficult to prove directly, because words vanish into air and very inconsiderately refuse to fossilize. Still, the people around you clearly coordinate. They respond to one another. They remember. They teach. Whether their speech is complex in exactly the way yours is remains debated. But this is not silence. This is a social world humming softly into motion. One adult crouches beside a young person and picks up 2 stones. The first is held steady. The second strikes it with a clean tap. A flake leaps away and lands in dust. The young person watches closely. Another tap. Another flake. The rhythm is calm, almost musical. Tap, pause, adjust. Tap, pause, breathe. It is not so different from watching someone chop vegetables carefully in a quiet kitchen, except the vegetables are stone, and the knife is also stone, and nobody has yet invented the drawer where the sharp thing always hides at the back. A quirky lesser-known tidbit fits into this moment. Some stone tools from the Middle Stone Age were made using prepared core techniques, where the maker shaped a stone in advance so that a later strike would remove a flake of a desired form. That means the toolmaker had to imagine the flake before it existed. In a way, the useful object was first held in the mind, then released from the stone. Nearby, another person scrapes a hide with steady strokes. The sound is soft and dry, like a fingernail across thick paper. The hide gives off a musky scent, not unpleasant exactly, but strong, earthy. Close to animal life, it may become bedding, wrapping, shelter, clothing, or a carrying bundle. A child reaches to touch the softened edge, then pulls back as if feeling the strange transformation from animal skin to human comfort. The band wakes as one body made of many small motions. A person checks the sky. Another looks toward the valley. Someone shares a bit of food with a child. A young adult lifts a bundle of tools and tests its weight. The elderly sit close to the fire where heat is easiest to gather. Their eyes follow everything. They may not move as quickly, but their knowledge has weight. In a world without libraries, memory sits in older bodies. This is where the morning becomes intimate. You're not watching a dramatic scene. Nobody is making a grand speech about destiny. Nobody announces that humans are about to become truly human, which is probably just as well. Because a people who announce that sort of thing before breakfast can be difficult. Instead, you witness ordinary dependence. One person warms the fire, one person teaches, one person watches the children, one person studies the sky, one person remembers where the good stone lies. Together, they become more than a cluster of bodies near smoke. The sunlight reaches the shelter now, brightening the rough edges of branches and hide. It catches dust floating above the fire and turns it gold for a few seconds. A child laughs softly at something you miss. The sound is brief, but it changes the camp. Several faces turn. One adult smiles, just barely. There it is again, the little thread connecting everyone. You might wonder whether this is the moment humanity lives in most clearly, not in invention alone, but in attention to one another. A human being wakes hungry, cold, uncertain, and vulnerable. A human group wakes with memory, warmth, tools, stories, watchers, learners, and hands ready to help. The day stretches open beyond the camp. Soon some will go toward plants, water, stone, or tracks. Others will remain near the fire. The children will follow, imitate, test, and be corrected. The old will notice what the young overlook. The smoke will cling to hair and hide. The ground will warm, and you, sitting quietly beside them, begin to feel that this small waking band is not a rough sketch of humanity. It is humanity already, breathing in the morning light. You remain near the waking camp as the morning settles into its working rhythm. The air is no longer sharp with dawn, but it still carries a cool edge in the shade of the shelter. Smoke drifts low, brushing through grass before thinning into the pale sky. Somewhere beyond the camp, a bird repeats the same three-note call with the confidence of a creature that has never once been asked to make sense of human evolution. Near the fire, the toolmaker sits with legs folded, a stone core resting against one thigh. The person is not young, though not old either. Their hands are broad, nicked, and steady. Around them lie flakes from earlier work, some useful, some discarded, some still waiting to be judged. You lower yourself nearby and listen as stone speaks in taps. Before this scene can be understood, it helps to remember the larger world of technology at this time. There is no metal, no pottery, no wheel, no woven cloth as you would know it. No polished wooden workbench with little drawers full of labelled pieces. Technology lives in the hands, in memory, and in materials gathered from the land: stone, bone, wood, hide, sinew, shell, plant fibre, pigment, fire. These are the ingredients of invention, and somehow, from these simple things, early humans build a workable world. A mainstream historical fact belongs hereby. Around 100,000 years ago, many Homo sapiens groups were making sophisticated stone tools, including flakes and points shaped for cutting, scraping, piercing, and processing food, hides, wood, and plant materials. These tools were not crude accidents. They required knowledge of raw stone, striking angles, force, sequence, and purpose. The toolmaker turns the core in the hand, studying it from several sides. The surface catches light in dull grey planes. You can almost feel the weight of it, cool and stubborn, with hidden lines of weakness running through the material. The maker raises a hammerstone, pauses, and strikes. A flake snaps free with a clean, dry sound. It lands near your knee, thin and sharp along one edge. If you picked it up very carefully, you would see that it is not just a broken bit. It has a form. It has a future. It may cut meat, scrape hide, shape wood, or be retouched into something more precise in the modern world. You might open a drawer and pull out a knife without admiring the entire chain of mining. Factory work, shipping, packaging, and that one impossible plastic wrapper. Here, the chain is visible. Hand, stone, skill, need. A younger person watches from the side, their eyes follow every movement. The toolmaker does not explain with a lecture. There is no blackboard, no diagram titled Flake Removal for Beginners, no deeply unnecessary quiz afterward. Instead, the lesson is in the rhythm. Turn the core, feel the edge, choose the platform, strike, but not too hard, strike with intention, wait for the stone to answer. Researchers continue to question how early humans learned and transmitted complex toolmaking skills. Some argue that imitation and gesture may have carried much of the teaching. Others suggest spoken language, or at least a rich system of vocal communication, was likely important for passing on difficult techniques. The stone flakes cannot tell us exactly what was said, but they do tell us that knowledge moved from mind to mind. You notice the younger person pick up a stone and copy the motion. Their first strike is awkward. The sound is dull. Nothing useful happens. The toolmaker glances over, reaches gently, adjusts the angle of the stone in the learner's hand, and taps the striking surface with one finger. Try here, not there. The lesson is patient. The learner tries again. This time, a small flake lifts away. Thick and imperfect, but real. There is a tiny silence, then a quiet sound of approval. It is not celebration, exactly. More like warmth. The kind of warmth that says, yes, the world is difficult. But now you know one more thing. Around the working area, the ground is dusted with fragments. Some glint like bits of frost. Others are matte and chalky. You can smell warm ash, dry earth, and the faint mineral scent of freshly broken stone, subtle but present, like rain on rock without the rain. The hammerstone sits smooth from use, rounded by old rivers long before human hands claimed it. A quirky, lesser-known tidbit lies in the way archaeologists can read such scattered debris, the leftover flakes from toolmaking, sometimes called debitage, can reveal the steps of production, the skill of the maker, and even whether people were repairing tools, teaching learners, or producing blanks for later use. Ancient rubbish, it turns out, can be wonderfully informative. Archaeology is very good at giving trash a promotion. Another adult arrives carrying a piece of wood, perhaps for shaping into a spear shaft or digging stick. The toolmaker selects a flake with a sharp edge and draws it along the wood. Thin curls peel away. The sound is soft, rasping, steady. The wood gives off a faint green smell. The tool's edge dulls little by little, and after a while the maker changes flakes. Tools here are not precious in the way a ceremonial object might be precious. They are practical, replaceable, and yet deeply skilled. Their value lies in use. You imagine how many tasks begin with stone, cutting meat into portions small enough to share, opening joints, scraping hides until they can wrap a child against cold, shaping wood for hunting, digging, carrying, building, working bone into points, crushing pigment, preparing plant fibers. A stone edge may last minutes or days, depending on the job, but the knowledge behind it can last generations. Some historians suggest that the real power of early human technology was not any single tool, while others disagree and point to particular inventions as turning points. Perhaps the gentler answer is that tools mattered because they belong to a whole way of life. A point needs a shaft needs wood. Wood may need fire to harden it. A hunting plan needs people need teaching. Teaching needs attention, nothing stands alone. The learner tries again, another flake breaks, this one too small. The toolmaker makes a soft clicking sound, neither scolding nor praising. The learner frowns. You know that expression. It has crossed faces in caves, classrooms, kitchens, offices, and probably anywhere someone has tried to assemble furniture from vague instructions. Frustration is ancient too. But the learner does not quit. They adjust the stone, turn it slightly, and strike again. A better flake comes away. The toolmaker lifts it, tests the edge with a careful thumb, then hands it back. A gift, perhaps, or simply the return of a lesson made visible. The fire crackles behind you. Children whisper. Someone laughs quietly at the learner's serious face, and the learner pretends not to hear. The camp feels ordinary, and that ordinariness is the point. Skill is not born in a flash of genius under dramatic skies. It is made in mornings like this, through repetition, correction, boredom, small success, and the steady refusal of stone to cooperate until it finally does. You look at the core again. It is smaller now, changed by every strike. In a way, it holds both past and future. Every scar marks a decision already made. Every remaining angle suggests a possibility not yet taken. The toolmaker sees those possibilities almost the way you might read words on a page. To you, it is stone. To them, it is a set of quiet instructions. The sun rises higher, warming the toolmaker's shoulders. The smell of smoke clings to the air. A child crawls closer to see the bright edge of a flake, and an adult gently pulls the child's hand back. Sharp things teach quickly, but not always kindly. You remain in the circle of sound. Tap, pause, turn, tap. The rhythm becomes almost soothing, like rain against a roof, like a clock in another room, like the soft breathing of work done well. Here, in the patient making of tools, you see another part of humanity taking shape. Hands remember, eyes learn, minds imagine what is not yet there. And from a stone held in morning light, tomorrow begins to sharpen. By the time the sun has climbed above the ridge, the camp has divided into smaller movements. No one announces a grand departure. There is no clattering of doors, no cheerful farewell shouted from a porch, no one patting their pockets and realizing they have forgotten the keys. Instead, people gather what they need with the quiet seriousness of those who know that the day's food is not waiting in a cupboard. It is out there, hidden in roots, shells, seeds, tracks, nests, branches, mud, and muscle. You follow a group moving away from the shelter, not toward one single task, but toward a landscape full of possibilities. The air has warmed, and the cool scent of morning is giving way to dust, crushed leaves, old grass, and the faint dampness rising from shaded ground. Behind you, the fire smoke thins into the sky. Ahead, the land opens in patches of scrub and scattered trees, with a shallow watercourse twisting through the valley floor. To understand this day, you need the wider setting, around 100,000 years ago. Early humans lived before farming, before domesticated herds, before granaries, before neat rows of grain whispering in a summer wind. Food came from hunting wild animals, gathering edible plants, collecting eggs, digging tubers, fishing or shellfish gathering where water allowed, and making careful use of seasonal abundance. The menu changed with place and season. In some regions, plant foods may have been central. In others, meat, fish, or shellfish mattered greatly. The past, as usual, refuses to behave like one simple diagram. A mainstream historical fact rests beneath your steps. Hunter-gatherer diets were often varied and depended heavily on local environments, with people combining plant gathering, animal hunting, and opportunistic collecting. This was not a daily march from cave to mammoth, despite what old cartoons sometimes suggested. Most meals were probably less theatrical and more practical, which is honestly true of most meals in history. The walkers spread slightly as they move. One adult studies the ground near the watercourse. Another bends beside a low plant and turns its leaves between finger and thumb. A younger person carries a digging stick, its point darkened and hardened by fire. The tool is simple, but in the right hands it opens the ground. Roots and tubers are quiet foods. They do not run away. They do not have antlers. They do, however, hide extremely well and require someone to know what the leaves above them mean. You stop beside the gatherer as they press the stick into the soil. The earth is firm near the top, softer below. A smell rises from it, damp, mineral, faintly sweet. The person works patiently, loosening the soil around a buried root. The younger one watches, then tries nearby. Their first attempt snaps the stem, a small mistake. The older gatherer makes a sound, half amusement, half instruction, and points to where the stick should enter. Even breakfast becomes a classroom. A quirky, lesser-known tidbit belongs here. In several prehistoric sites, archaeologists have studied microscopic residues and wear marks on stone tools, revealing that some tools were used not only on meat and hide, but also on plants, wood, and starchy foods. Tiny traces, almost invisible, can show that ancient diets were broader than the dramatic bones left behind. Bones shout, plants whisper. Archaeologists have learned slowly to listen to whispers. The group continues. The sun touches your shoulders, insects move in bright thread above the grass. Somewhere near the water, frogs or small animals rustle and vanish before you see them. A bird's wing flashes blue-grey between branches. Every sound makes someone glance up, not fearful but attentive. The land is alive with food, danger, weather, and clues. Researchers continue to question exactly how early humans balanced hunting and gathering in different regions, especially because plant remains decay more easily than bones and stone. Some scholars argue that meat played a major role in human evolution, providing dense energy and social cooperation. Others emphasize the steady importance of plant foods, shellfish, tubers, and flexible diets. The calm answer, standing here among roots and tracks, may be that human survival depended on not being too proud to eat what the landscape offered. Near a patch of low shrubs, a child finds small fruits. The adult beside them watches carefully before allowing the picking to continue. Not every bright thing is friendly. The fruit stains fingertips dark red. The child eats one, then grins, teeth briefly coloured. It is a tiny human moment, sweet and messy, and across 100,000 years it feels almost embarrassingly familiar. Some things do not require translation. Another adult carries a small bundle of plant fibres. They tuck gathered food into it, then twist the top to hold it closed. Containers matter. A hand can carry only so much. A skin bag, a woven bundle, a shell, or a folded leaf can turn scattered finds into a meal for several people. Today you might fill a shopping basket under bright electric lights, trying to remember whether you already have salt at home. Here, the basket is memory, planning, and effort braided together. Farther on, the mood shifts slightly. The walkers notice tracks. Hoof prints press into drying mud near the water. The edges are still sharp. An animal passed recently. The adults gather close, speaking in low sounds and gestures. One points toward a line of brush where the ground rises. Another touches the wind with a lifted hand, feeling its direction on damp skin. Scent matters, noise matters. Patience matters most of all. You do not witness a dramatic hunt here. The story remains quiet, because most of survival is not a chase. It is waiting, reading, deciding whether effort is worth the risk. Perhaps the animal is too far ahead. Perhaps the wind is wrong. Perhaps the group is too small today. Early humans could hunt. Yes, but they also had to judge when not to hunt, which may be one of the less glamorous but more useful forms of intelligence. Some historians suggest that cooperative hunting helped shape human communication and social bonds, while others disagree about how central hunting was compared with gathering and scavenging. What seems clear is that food did not belong only to the one who found it. Sharing was important in many foraging societies and likely had deep roots. A large animal, if taken, is too much for one person and too valuable to waste. A patch of fruit can feed children. A dug root can be cooked for elders. Food becomes social. The group turns toward the shade and rests. Someone lays the gathered roots in a small pile. Another cracks open a hard-shelled nut or seed with a stone, tapping carefully until it gives. The sound is crisp and satisfying. A child tries to copy and nearly smashes the whole thing flat. An adult sighs softly. Even in the Stone Age, snack preparation could test the spirit. You sit among them in the warm shade. The ground is dry under your hands. Leaves shift overhead with a papery sound. The smell of crushed fruit mixes with sweat. Dust and green stems. No one has much. Not yet. But there is enough to continue. Enough to carry back. Enough to keep looking. And you begin to see food not as a simple need, but as a web tying people to place. They know when flowers become fruit. They know where tubers fatten after rain. They know which animals come to water at dawn. They know which stones break bone, which leaves wrap food, which wood burns slowly. The landscape feeds them only because they've learned how to ask it carefully. By late morning, the bundle has grown heavier. The walkers begin to angle back toward the thin smoke of camp. The sun is brighter now, the insects louder, the shadow shorter. A younger person carries roots with visible pride, trying to look as though the weight is nothing. An older adult notices and does not comment, which may be its own kindness. You follow them back through grass shining in the light. The day has offered no miracle, no feast dropped from the sky, no dramatic victory, just roots, fruit, signs, choices, and the patient gathering of enough. And in that enough, you find another quiet answer to the question of becoming human. Humans became truly human not only by dreaming under stars, but by learning how to eat together from a restless land. By the time the gatherers return, the camp has changed its mood again. Morning work has become midday patience. The fire sits lower than before, but it is still alive, tucked beneath ash and watched with the quiet respect given to something useful, dangerous, and slightly demanding. Smoke moves in a soft ribbon over the shelter, carrying the smell of charred wood, old meals, and warmed hide into the brightening air. You step back into the circle of people and notice how everyone seems to understand the fire's place without needing to discuss it. The children know not to tumble too close. The older ones know where to sit for warmth without blocking the cook. The toolmaker keeps flakes and dry grass away from stray sparks. Someone nudges a blackened branch inward with the end of a stick, and a few orange points brighten under the grey ash. In this deep past, fire is not a decorative comfort. It is technology, protection, kitchen, gathering pace, a night lamp all at once, by 100,000 years ago. Humans have been using fire for a very long time, though the timing and regularity of early fire control varies by region and site. Here, in your imagined camp, fire turns raw ingredients into softer food, makes some plants easier to digest, warms cold hands, hardens wooden points, keeps certain animals at a respectful distance, and gives people a reason to face one another after sunset. The group returning from the valley brings roots, small fruits, and a few hard seeds or nuts wrapped in plant fibre. Another person has remained near camp, scraping hide. Someone else has repaired a wooden shaft. These small streams of work now flow toward the hearth. Food is set down, tools are shifted, a flat stone is cleared, the fire is coaxed brighter, and thin sticks begin to crackle. You sit nearby as one of the roots is brushed clean. Dirt flakes away from its rough skin. A sharp stone edge trims the end. The smell is earthy and faintly sweet, like a garden after rain, though no garden exists yet and no one here is waiting for neat rows of anything. The root is placed near heat, not directly in flame, and turned after a while with a stick. Cooking at this scale is careful. Too much fire gives ash, too little gives disappointment. This is still true, by the way, though modern people have added smoke alarms to make disappointment louder. One well-supported idea about human evolution is that cooked food gave early humans important advantages. Cooking can soften tough foods, reduce some toxins, kill many parasites and pathogens, and make certain nutrients easier to absorb. The full role of cooking in human evolution is still debated, especially when regular cooking became widespread. But its effects on daily life are easy to feel here. A hard root becomes chewable, meat becomes safer and easier for children and elders to eat. Warm food does something to the spirit as well as the stomach. The fire also changes time. In daylight, people scatter across the land, looking, gathering, tracking, repairing. At night, fire pulls them inward, around it. Tasks can continue after sunset, tools can be fixed, hides can be worked, children can be watched, stories, plans, warnings, jokes, and memories can move from person to person in the wavering light. Not far from you, a child holds a roasted piece of root and blows on it with exaggerated seriousness. Steam lifts in a pale thread. An adult reaches out, breaks the piece, and gives the smaller portion back first. The child takes it carefully, fingers quick from heat, and bites. Their face relaxes. Not joy exactly, more like relief. Hunger has many moods, and this is one of the gentler ones. A lesser-known detail hides in the ashes of ancient hearths. Archaeologists can sometimes identify repeated fires through layers of burned sediment. Charcoal, heated stones, and microscopic changes in soil, in certain caves and open-air sites. The remains of hearths show that people returned to particular places and used fire in organised ways. A hearth can become a kind of quiet signature, not written in ink but in heat. You look at the circle around the flames. Faces are lit from below now, even in daytime, because the shelter casts a little shade. Smoke makes eyes water. Someone coughs softly, then shifts position with the resigned dignity of anyone who has ever sat on the wrong side of a campfire. There is always a wrong side. The smoke finds it. It has had thousands of generations of practice. The debate around fire is not only about when humans first controlled it, but about how deeply it reshaped social life. Some researchers argue that reliable firelight helped create longer evenings for communication, teaching, bonding, and planning. Others are more cautious, pointing out that evidence is patchy and that human social life did not depend on one invention alone. The truth may be layered, like the ash beneath the embers. Fire mattered, but it mattered inside a larger human world of care, memory, and cooperation. A person returns from the edge of camp carrying more dry branches. They are not large, only what can be gathered without effort becoming wasteful. The wood is stacked nearby, sorted loosely by thickness. Small twigs to wake the flame, larger sticks to sustain it. Damp pieces kept farther away until they dry. This is a tiny act of planning, but tiny planning is the fabric of survival. Tomorrow's fire begins with what someone gathers today. You hear the first clear sounds of conversation ripple around the hearth. A gesture toward the valley, a glance at the food pile, a short vocal pattern repeated, perhaps naming a place, animal, person, or action you cannot know. But you can sense that the fire allows time for such exchanges to thicken. People are not only eating, they are updating the shared mind of the group. The reeds held tracks, the fruit patches ripening. The wind changed near the slope. The young one learned where to dig. The older one remembers another place where roots may be better after rain. Around the hearth, knowledge becomes communal. One person's discovery matters more when others hear it. One person's mistake becomes less costly when others learn from it. This is not school as you know it, with bells and chairs and someone drawing an unnecessarily confident timeline. It is education folded into warmth. The cooked roots are passed around, some are soft, Some still too fibrous, the hard seeds are cracked, and a few kernels are shared. A strip of meat from an earlier day may be warmed near the fire, giving off a rich scent that makes several heads turn. Food does not have to be abundant to become meaningful. The act of passing it from hand to hand already says something. You are part of us. Your hunger matters. Wait your turn, tiny cousin. Yes, we all saw you try to sneak the bigger piece. The sun lowers slightly. Though afternoon is not yet evening, shadows lengthen under the shelter. Heat presses against your face, behind you. The air remains cooler. You feel the old contrast of fire. Too hot in front, too cold behind, perfect nowhere, comforting anyway. This hearth is not civilization, but it contains the seed of many things civilization will later enlarge. A central place. Shared meals, evening talk, rules for children, work done in common light, the management of danger, the preservation of warmth through the night. Fire makes a small island in the world, and around that island, human beings become more visible to one another. You sit quietly as another branch catches, flame curling along its bark. Sparks lift, drift, and fade before they reach the shelter roof. The camp seems to breathe with the fire. Inhale, crackle, exhale, smoke. Faces soften, hands open. The day's scattered efforts gather into one glowing centre, and in this circle of heat, food, ash, and low voices, you understand another part of the long human becoming. To be truly human is not simply to survive the dark. It is to make a place where others can survive it with you. Evening approaches without hurry. The sun lowers behind the ridge, and the long shadows of grass and stone stretch across the camp like dark fingers relaxing after a day of work. The air cools first at ground level. You feel it around your ankles, then your hands, then your face. The fire grows more important with every fading colour in the sky, and the people move closer to it almost without thinking. You remain beside the hearth as the camp gathers into its quieter shape. Daylight belonged to distance, to searching, digging, watching tracks, carrying wood, scraping hides, and reading the land. Night belongs to nearness. Firelight draws everyone inward, and with it comes the low murmur of communication. Not writing, not formal speech as you hear it now, not a lecture, thankfully, because even in the Stone Age, nobody needed a 47-slide presentation after dinner, but something passes between people, rich enough to guide hands, warn children, share memory, and hold the group together. The world of 100,000 years ago leaves no recorded language behind. Spoken words vanish the instant they are made, unless someone later invents writing, and these people are very far from that. Still, their lives require coordination. They must name places, signal danger, teach toolmaking, remember kin, describe animals, plan movements, soothe children, and perhaps tell stories about what happened before you arrived. A group that survives like this must share meaning in ways more subtle than simple cries. You watch two adults near the fire. One gestures toward the valley, curving a hand to suggest the reeds. Another points toward the higher ground and makes a short sound. A third person responds with a different motion, maybe indicating wind, direction, or the recent tracks found in the mud. Their faces change as they speak. Eyebrows lift, mouths tighten, shoulders turn. The whole body participates. Meaning is not only in sound, it is in posture, timing, gaze, and memory. One important piece of accepted evidence is that Homo sapiens had the physical and mental foundations for complex communication long before written records. Exactly how their languages sounded is unknown, but modern human anatomy, social cooperation, symbolic behaviour, and the demands of teaching all point toward powerful forms of communication among early humans. You cannot translate the sounds around this fire, yet you can feel that they are not random. A child sits near an older woman, watching her hands. The older woman makes a repeated gesture, then touches the child's wrist and guides the motion. Perhaps she is teaching a knot, a carrying sling, or the way to twist plant fibers. She says something softly. The child repeats the sound, imperfectly. The older woman smiles, then corrects it. There's nothing dramatic here, just the small, ancient music of instruction. A lesser-known detail comes from the body itself, the hyoid bone. A small bone in the throat involved in speech has been found in Neanderthal remains in a form similar to that of modern humans. This does not prove they spoke exactly as we do, and it does not belong only to Homo sapiens. But it reminds you that the deep past may have been far more vocal and socially complex than older stereotypes allowed. Even our human relatives may not have lived in silence. The fire pops, a spark rises and disappears. Someone laughs at a sound made by a young person, a soft laugh that travels around the circle and fades. Humour, too, is hard to fossilize. No archaeologist can brush dust from a joke and put it in a museum case. Though honestly, some museum labels do try. But laughter leaves its trace in bodies and bonds. You do not need to know the words to recognize the warmth. Researchers continue to disagree about when fully modern language emerged. Some think it developed gradually across hundreds of thousands of years, with gestures, calls, and simpler vocal systems becoming more complex over time. Others suggest that something closer to modern language may have appeared relatively late, tied to symbolic thought and expanding social networks. The evidence is indirect, like listening for footsteps after the walker has already gone. Yet the question matters because language changes what a mind can do with other minds. You sit in the glow and imagine a warning passed from one person to another. Not just danger there, but danger near the water after dark. The large cat that waits where the reeds grow. The place where your brother once saw it. The place we avoid when the moon is thin. With richer communication. Experience can travel beyond the one who lived it. A mistake does not have to be repeated by every generation. Memory becomes portable. Near the shelter, the toolmaker from the morning lifts a stone core and shows the learner again where to strike. This time, the teaching includes more sound than before. A short word, perhaps, a clicking correction, a repeated pattern that matches hand movement. The learner nods and adjusts. You see how language, gesture, and demonstration may have worked together, not replacing one another, but weaving into a stronger chord. The night air thickens with scent. Smoke clings to hair. Warm roots give off a sweet, earthy smell. A hide drying near the edge of the fire releases a musky odour. The bodies around you smell of sweat, dust, animal fat, crushed leaves, and smoke. Not unpleasant in context, just human. Deeply and unmistakably human. Modern life hides the body under soap, laundry, filtered air, and little bottles that claim to smell like rain on cedar, although rain on cedar rarely smells like a shopping mall here. Scent is part of knowing who is near. One adult hums quietly while working a strip of fibre. The sound is low and repetitive, almost too soft to notice. A child leans against someone's side and grows still. The hum may not be a song in the modern sense, but it shapes the air. Another voice joins for a few breaths, then stops. This small blending of sound makes the firelit circle feel closer, as if the dark beyond it has moved farther away. You begin to understand that words, or the ancestors of words, are not only tools for facts, they are tools for comfort. A soft sound tells a child that someone is here. A repeated phrase marks a task. A name summons a face. A warning protects. A remembered story gives shape to fear. A joke releases tension after a hard day. In the old night, speech may have been warmth of another kind. Some scientists point to symbolic objects, pigments, ornaments, and complex tools as clues that early humans could think and communicate in layered ways. Others caution that symbols do not always mean what we think they mean, and that modern observers may read too much into ancient traces. Fair enough, the past is not a mirror placed conveniently for us, but beside this hearth. The need for shared meaning is everywhere. It hangs in the air as clearly as smoke. The group grows quieter as darkness deepens. Communication does not stop, it simply becomes softer. A mother shifts a sleeping child onto her lap. An older man points upward, perhaps to a star, perhaps to a night bird, perhaps to nothing more than a sound he has noticed. Two young adults exchange a glance and a smile. Someone near the back of the shelter mutters and turns over. The fire answers with a crackle. You look at their faces and think about the miracle of being understood, even now, in your own life, after thousands of generations and all the languages of the world. So much peace comes from one person knowing what you mean. A hand squeeze, a familiar voice in the dark, a message that says, "I arrived safely," a whisper that says, "Sleep now." Here, before writing, before recorded history, before anyone has carved a lore or sung a hymn that survives, meaning is already moving. It travels through breath, hands, eyes, rhythm, silence, and shared attention. It makes the group sojourn the moment. It allows yesterday to advise tomorrow. The fire sinks lower, the voices grow slower. The child beside the older woman finally closes their eyes. The last gesture you notice is simple. Someone reaches across the glow and points towards the embers, and another person, understanding at once, pushes a branch inward. No written word has passed between them. Nothing needed to be written. Night folds itself gently around the camp, and the fire becomes the centre of the world again. Beyond its glow, the land has faded into shapes rather than details. Grass is only a dark softness, trees are only taller shadows. The ridge where the morning first brightened now rests under stars, quiet and immense, as if the sky has lowered itself to listen. You sit close enough to feel warmth on your shins, while your back remembers the cold around you. The band settles into the slow after-dinner rhythm of people who have worked, walked, watched, gathered, and taught through a long day. Some still speak in soft fragments. Others are already sinking towards sleep. A child curls against a woman's side. A young adult rubs dust from a foot. Someone coughs once from the smoke, then shifts with the long-suffering grace of anyone who has ever lost an argument with a campfire. Near the edge of the shelter, an older person sits wrapped in hide. Their hair is pale or grey in the firelight, though colour is hard to judge beneath smoke and flame. Their hands are thin, the knuckles raised like small stones beneath skin. They do not move quickly. When they reach for warmth, the movement is careful. When someone passes food, another hand helps guide it closer. In this ancient world, age is both burden and treasure. There are no pharmacies, no reading glasses, no soft mattresses, no appointment reminders, no polite little pill organisers with the days of the week printed on top. Injury, infection, childbirth, cold, hunger, and accident all press hard on human life. Yet some people do survive into older age. And those who do carry something no tool can fully replace. They carry memory. One widely accepted point about human social life is that care for the vulnerable has deep roots. Archaeological evidence from various prehistoric human groups shows individuals surviving serious injuries or physical limitations for long periods, which suggests that others help them eat, move, heal, or remain included. The exact examples and interpretations vary, but the pattern matters. Human beings did not succeed only by being strong. They also succeeded by keeping others alive when strength failed. You watch a child bring a softened piece of roasted root to the older person. The child does it with exaggerated seriousness, as if performing a task of great ceremony. The older person accepts it, touches the child's wrist, and makes a low sound that may be thanks, approval, or gentle teasing. The child smiles and looks away, proud but trying not to show it too much. Pride is also ancient, and children have never been subtle about it. A lesser-known detail comes from bones healed long before modern medicine. At several prehistoric sites, researchers have found remains of individuals who lived for years with severe injuries, missing teeth, or limited mobility. One famous Neanderthal from Shanidar Cave, often discussed in this context, survived significant impairments, though scholars differ on exactly how much support he required, whether Homo sapiens or their close relatives. Such cases remind you that deep human communities could make room for frailty. The older person near you chews slowly. Their eyes follow the younger adults as they sort tools and prepare for sleep. You sense that they know the camp in layers. Not only the camp of tonight, but camps before this one. A wet season when the valley flooded. A dry season when animals moved away. A child now grown who once burned a hand on these same kinds of embers. A path that should not be taken when the moon is gone. A grove that fruits later than expected. In a world without writing, an elder is a living archive, though probably one that occasionally falls asleep while being consulted. Researchers continue to debate how far back structured care, elder respect, and social support systems extend in the human story. Some emphasize that caregiving may have evolved gradually among several human species, not only Homo sapiens. Others ask how much evidence of care can truly be read from bones alone. A healed injury may suggest help, but it does not describe the tenderness of the hand that brought food. Archaeology gives clues. Imagination must remain careful, but it is invited to sit nearby. The fire shifts, and light moves across faces. A young woman leans close to the older person and makes a gesture toward the dark land beyond camp. The elder responds with a longer motion, pointing first toward the ridge, then down toward the valley, then tapping 2 fingers on the ground. Others glance over. The conversation draws in one listener, then another. Perhaps it is about tomorrow's route. Perhaps it is about a place where stone can be found. Perhaps it is an old warning repeated because repetition is cheaper than disaster. You hear the soft rhythm of the elder's voice. It is rough and thin, but steady. The group listens. Not everyone with authority speaks loudly. Sometimes authority sounds like dry leaves moving in a small wind. This kind of knowledge would have mattered enormously. Older people can remember rare events that younger adults have never seen. A drought, a flood, a dangerous animal's pattern, a seasonal food source that appears only under certain conditions. Modern people may search online for what to do in strange weather. These people search a memory, and memory has a face sitting beside the fire. A child, not yet sleepy enough to surrender, crawls toward the elder and settles near their knee. The elder places one hand on the child's head. The hand remains there, light and still. The child does not move. The gesture says something larger than its size. You are known, you are held, you belong beside the fire. Some anthropologists have suggested that grandmothers and older adults may have played an important role in human evolution by helping feed, protect, and teach children, allowing knowledge and care to stretch across generations. Others caution that such ideas are difficult to test in the deep past and may vary widely between societies. Still, watching this scene, it is easy to feel the power of extra hands and longer memory. The night grows colder. The people shift closer beneath hides. The texture of those hides seems rough at the edges, smoother where many hands have worked them. You imagine the old person's fingers remembering how to scrape, twist, tie, and carry. Even if they no longer do each task quickly, skills do not vanish when speed fades. They settle deeper, not far away. Someone with a limp moves carefully toward the fire. A younger adult clears space without comment. Another adjusts a branch so sparks fall inward. No speech is needed. The person lowers themselves down and exhales, the sound almost lost beneath the crackle. Their presence changes the circle just slightly, and the circle makes room. To become human, you begin to understand, is not only to imagine tomorrow or shape stone with planning hands. It is also to notice weakness and answer it. A cold person is brought closer to heat. A hungry child receives a first bite. An injured companion is not abandoned simply because the day would move faster without them. Of course, life here can be harsh. Of course, every group must make difficult choices, but the evidence of care, however fragmentary, shines like an ember in the archaeological dark. You sit quietly as the elder's voice slows. The child by their knee has fallen asleep, head tilted awkwardly, mouth slightly open. The elder looks down and brushes a thumb across the child's hair. Outside the shelter, something moves through the grass, then fades away. No one rises. The night remains calm. The older person closes their eyes, but others keep the fire alive. That, too, is care. Not grand, not sentimental, not decorated with words, just warmth maintained for bodies that need it. And here in the soft glow, you see one of humanity's oldest tools, though it is not made of stone, bone, or wood. It is the decision to keep another person close. Morning returns in pale layers, and the camp wakes more softly than it did before. The night has left beads of moisture on grass tips and a chill in the hollow places beneath the shelter. The fire is still alive, but only just. A hidden warmth under grey ash. Someone stirs it with a stick, and the embers answer in a dull red glow as they bearing their duty with mild reluctance. You sit near the edge of the shelter and watch the children wake. They do not rise all at once. One rolls over and presses closer to a sleeping adult. Another sits upright suddenly, blinking at nothing, as if surprised to find the world still here. A smaller child reaches toward the fire, and an older child catches the wrist before an adult needs to speak. The lesson has already travelled from one small body to another. Do not touch. Warm is good. Flame is different. History at its most practical. In this world, childhood is not separated from daily work in the way many modern lives separate it. There are no schools with painted walls, no plastic toys, no scheduled enrichment activities, no one carefully debating whether a toddler has enough sensory play, which the toddler would probably answer by eating mud. Here, learning happens everywhere. Children learn by watching, copying, playing, being corrected, and slowly becoming useful without ever stopping being children. A solid historical point sits beneath this morning. Seen hunter-gatherer children in many societies learn through observation, imitation, play, storytelling, and gradual participation in adult tasks. While we cannot watch children from 100,000 years ago directly, archaeological traces, comparisons with recent foraging societies, and the complexity of ancient skill suggest that learning began early and was woven into ordinary life. You follow a group of children as they drift toward a patch of open ground just beyond the fire. The sun has not yet warmed it fully, and the dust feels cool. One child picks up a small stone flake, but an adult makes a warning sound. The child drops it, then selects a duller pebble with theatrical innocence, as if this was always the plan. Some behaviours are apparently older than agriculture. Two older children crouch over a piece of soft wood. One uses a blunt stone to scrape at it, copying the gestures of the toolmaker you watched earlier. The result is not useful. The wood is scratched more than shaped. Still, the movement matters. The child's wrist learns pressure. The eyes learn angle. The mind learns sequence. A skill first appears as play, then practice, then contribution. Nearby, a smaller child arranges pebbles in a line, then breaks the line apart and begins again. Another child carries twigs to a pretend hearth and makes soft clicking noises. perhaps imitating the sound of adults tending fire. Their world is not make-believe in the modern toy store sense, but imagination is clearly present. The child who pretends to feed a flame is rehearsing attention. The one who scrapes wood is rehearsing work. The one who watches both is collecting future knowledge without looking as though they are doing anything various at all. A small but fascinating detail from archaeology supports this image. Some ancient stone tool scatters include poorly made flakes or awkward attempts that may represent beginners practicing. Researchers are cautious. Of course, because not every messy flake was made by a child. Adults have bad days too. But patterns of skill, error, and repeated mistakes can sometimes hint at learning spaces where novices tried their hands. You hear laughter. One child has balanced a seed pod on another's head. It falls. The others find this much funnier than seems reasonable, which is also a stable feature of childhood. The adult nearby glances over but does not interrupt. Play is noisy, but it is not meaningless. In play, children test bodies, rules, trust, and attention. They learn who gets angry, who shares, who leads, who cheats, who comforts, and who is likely to throw a seed pod back. Specialists continue to question how childhood itself shaped human evolution. Some argue that the long human childhood allowed more time for learning complex skills, social rules, language, and environmental knowledge. Others point out that a long dependency also creates heavy demands on adults and requires cooperative care. Both are true enough to sit together by the fire. Human children take a wonderfully inconvenient amount of time to grow, and that inconvenience may be part of why human societies became so deeply cooperative. The older woman from the previous night sits near the fire, wrapped in hide, watching the children with half-closed eyes. One child approaches her carrying a twisted length of plant fibre. The twist is loose and uneven. The elder takes it, pulls it apart, and begins again slowly. Her fingers move with a softness that suggests long habit. Twist, hold, twist, tighten. The child watches. The mouth slightly open. Then the elder places the fibre into the child's hands. The first attempt comes undone. The elder chuckles. The child tries again. This is how knowledge survives without writing. It does not leap across generations in perfect form. It frays, slips, tangles, and is patiently twisted again. You can almost feel the fibre between fingers, dry and slightly rough, catching on skin. The child frowns in concentration. The elder waits. Nothing about the moment is efficient. Efficiency in the modern sense. In the moderns, would have given up and done the task faster, but speed is not the point. Tomorrow needs hands that know. Farther from the fire, 2 young boys or girls, it is hard to tell at this age and distance. Practice throwing small sticks toward a mark in the dust. Most fall short. One flies sideways and startles a bird from the grass. The children freeze, then laugh. An adult points sharply, not angry, but reminding them to watch where things go. A playful throw today might become a hunting skill years later. It might also become a lesson in not hitting your cousin, which is valuable in any century. The morning smells of ash, damp hide, crushed grass, and the faint sweetness of warmed roots. The sunlight grows stronger. Touching hair and shoulders, children move between warmth and curiosity. Never staying in one state for long, they are hungry, distracted, affectionate, impatient, brilliant, foolish, and extremely human. You notice how many adults keep track of them. Not constantly, not with the anxious hovering, but with a wide field of attention. A glance from the toolmaker, a hand from an older sibling, a warning sound from someone scraping hide, a gentle tug away from the fire. Care is distributed. Childhood belongs to the group. Anthropologists often discuss cooperative breeding in humans. The idea that mothers are helped by fathers, grandparents, siblings, and others in raising children. The depth and form of this cooperation in the distant past remain open to interpretation, but the basic usefulness is easy to understand. A child who has many watchers has more chances to survive, and a group with surviving children has a future. One of the smaller children grows tired and sits suddenly in the dust, as if the legs have held a meeting and resigned. An older child offers a piece of roasted root. The smaller one takes it with both hands. Dust sticks to the food. No one appears concerned. This is not a sterile world. Immune systems here are not living a sheltered life. You watch the children eat, play, copy, fail, and try again. Their lives are not easy, and childhood here is not the protected softness many people might wish for, but it is not empty of tenderness. There is laughter beside the ash. There are lessons in the dust. There is a hand pulling another hand away from flame. There is pride when a fibre twist holds for 3 whole breaths before falling apart. And slowly, gently. You understand that the human story is never only carried by adults. It is carried by the small ones who copy them imperfectly. The future begins as a child tapping stone badly in the morning light. The day is warmed enough for the camp to loosen again. People move more freely now, no longer folded against the cold. Sunlight rests on the shelter roof, bright along the edges of branches and hide. The fire burns low in the centre, not forgotten, simply less urgent while the air is kind. Smoke drifts lazily upward, the way smoke does when it knows no one is in a hurry. You follow a young adult toward a flat patch of ground near the shelter, where a few objects lie on a piece of hide. At first they seem ordinary. Stones, shells, bits of bone, a small lump of red earth. Then the person picks up the red lump and rubs it against a rough stone. A fine powder gathers in the shallow hollow beneath. It is the colour of dried blood, sunset, warm clay, and autumn leaves. Although autumn itself is not yet a season marked by calendar. Or poetic coffee flavours. The substance is ochre, an iron-rich mineral pigment. And it matters in the story of becoming human because it does not simply feed the body, cut hide, or sharpen wood. It adds colour to life. Archaeological finds show that early humans used ochre long before agriculture and writing. At sites in Africa and beyond, pieces of ochre were scraped, ground, engraved, or carried, suggesting that people valued pigment for practical, decorative, and possibly symbolic reasons. You kneel nearby, watching the powder collect. The grinding sound is soft, grainy, almost like distant sand under a slow footstep. The person adds a little liquid, perhaps water, fat, or another binder, and works it with a fingertip until the powder darkens into paste. The smell is faintly mineral, mixed with the ever-present smoke and the warm scent of skin. A child leans in too close. An adult gently moves them back. Another person laughs under their breath, and the child pretends to inspect a stick with great importance. This is a place of work, but also curiosity. Everyone seems aware that colour draws the eye. Even you, visitor from a world drowning in screens and packaging and tiny notification dots, feel pulled toward that little red mark on stone. The young adult touches the paste to the back of one hand and draws a line across the skin. The mark is simple, slightly uneven. It catches in the tiny creases and pores. Then another line crosses it. Someone else watches, nods, and points toward the forearm. A longer stroke appears there, glowing red-brown against skin. You cannot know whether the marks mean beauty, identity, readiness, memory, play, protection from insects or sun, ritual, or something more practical. Perhaps several meanings sit together. As they often do, humans rarely use symbols for only one reason. We are wonderfully untidy creatures. Specialists have long disagreed about the meaning of early ochre use. Some see it as evidence of symbolic thought, a sign that people were marking identity, group belonging, or ritual meaning. Others argue that ochre could have served practical purposes, such as hide processing, adhesive mixtures, sunscreen, insect repellent, or preservation. The sensible path may be to leave room for both. A thing can be useful and meaningful at the same time. Consider a wedding ring, a national flag, or a favourite old sweater that should probably have been retired years ago but absolutely will not be. Nearby, another person holds a shell with a small hole near one edge. It is pale, smooth in places, rough in others, and light enough to rest in the palm without effort. A cord of plant fibre or sinew passes through it. The shell may have come from far away, perhaps from a coast or river edge, perhaps through travel or exchange. It is not food now, it is not a knife, it is something to wear, carry, display, remember, or trade. One fascinating clue from the deep past comes from perforated shells found at sites such as Blombos Cave in South Africa and other early human locations. Some shells bear traces of wear and pigment, leading researchers to interpret them as beads or ornaments. Not everyone agrees on every detail, naturally, because archaeology would apparently feel lonely without debate. But such finds suggest that humans were adorning themselves and perhaps sending social messages through objects tens of thousands of years before cities. You watch as the shell is lifted to the neck of a child, then removed again before the child can grab it with sticky fingers. The adults smile. The child protests softly, then becomes distracted by dust. The shell rests in the young adult's hand, bright against ochre-stained skin. In the firelight later, it would catch and release tiny points of light. A small object, yes, but small objects can carry enormous meaning. Colour changes the camp in subtle ways. A line on skin makes a hand seem chosen, not accidental. A mark on a tool might identify its owner, its maker, its use, or the memory of an event. Pigment on it might decorate, protect, or transform it. A red smear on a stone might be nothing more than leftover work, or it might be the beginning of a sign you cannot know. The uncertainty is not failure. It is part of the quiet mystery. The person grinding ochre pauses and looks toward the older woman near the fire. The elder gestures with 2 fingers, perhaps approving the mixture, perhaps correcting it. So the grinder adds more powder. The paste thickens. This, too, is knowledge. Where to find the mineral, how to grind it, what to mix it with, which shade is desired, how much is enough. It is easy to overlook, because pigment seems softer than spear points or cutting flakes, but beauty has techniques. Meaning has recipes. You imagine the journey of the ochre before it reached this camp. Someone noticed the red earth in a bank, cliff, dry stream bed, or exposed stone. Someone broke a piece free and carried it, even though every carried object adds weight. That matters. In a mobile life, you do not carry useless things for long. If pigment travels, it has values. Some researchers propose that the use of pigment and ornaments helped early humans recognize friends, kin, partners, or group membership across wider social networks. Others point out that many marks may have been temporary, playful, or practical, and that we should be cautious about reading modern categories into ancient lives. Still, the red line on the hand before you feels like more than accident. It is a deliberate change in appearance. The body becomes a surface for intention. The afternoon light turns golden. The ochre paste dries slightly on skin, becoming matte and earthy. A breeze carries dust through the camp. You hear children nearby tapping sticks. The toolmaker's stones click softly in the distance. A hide scrapes with its familiar dry whisper. Ordinary life continues around the red pigment, which is important because symbolism, if this is symbolism, does not float above survival, it sits inside it. People decorate after gathering food. They grind pigment near tools. They wear shells while watching children. Meaning grows among practical tasks, like a flower pushing through packed soil. You touch nothing, but you imagine the texture of the ochre paste, cool at first, then drying, tightening faintly on the skin, a mark you can feel as well as see, a small reminder that a body can carry a message. Perhaps tonight, by firelight, the red marks will glow deeper. Perhaps someone will sing, gesture, or tell a story. Perhaps the marks simply please the eye, and perhaps that is enough. The young adult finishes the pattern, looks at it for a moment, and holds the marked hand toward another person. There is a quiet exchange of expression, almost a smile. Recognition passes between them. No monument stands here. No painted cave wall surrounds you yet. No written symbol names the world, but a line of red earth crosses living skin. And suddenly the body is not only a body, it is memory, identity, imagination, and presence. You sit in the warm dust and watch the colour dry. Night returns with a softer face than before. The day's warmth lifts slowly out of the ground, and the camp gathers itself beneath a sky so wide it seems almost impossible. The fire glows low in the centre, its flames modest now, enough to keep the dark at a respectful distance without pretending to conquer it. Smoke rises, bends, and disappears among the first stars. You lie back near the edge of the shelter, where the ground is firm but not uncomfortable, and look upward. There are no city lights here, no windows lit in towers, no aircraft crossing with blinking signals, no satellites sliding politely over the horizon like tiny modern ghosts. The sky is dark in the deepest sense. Every star seems awake. The Milky Way spills overhead in a pale river, thick and bright, as if someone has brushed ash and milk across black stone. The people around you know this sky, though not as modern astronomy knows it. They do not speak of galaxies or light years. They do not write tables of lunar cycles or scratch equations beside a candle. But they live under the night every night of their lives. And that kind of familiarity is a teacher. The sky tells of weather, season, direction, and time. The moon changes the brightness of the night. Stars rise and set in patterns. Certain animals move differently under certain lights. Darkness itself has moods. Long before formal calendars, humans almost certainly noticed recurring patterns in the heavens. The changing moon is one of the easiest natural cycles to observe, and many later hunter-gatherer societies used lunar phases, seasonal stars, and the movement of the sun to help organize travel, gathering, ritual, and memory for people living without clocks. The sky is not decoration, it is a slow, turning instrument. Near you, a child points upward. An adult follows the gesture, then speaks softly. You cannot know whether they are naming a star, telling a story, warning that the moonless nights are colder, or simply answering a child's question with the ancient parental strategy of sounding more certain than one feels. The child keeps pointing. The adult gently lowers the little arm, perhaps because the question has been answered, or perhaps because bedtime was invented long before beds. The air smells of smoke, cooling earth, and hide. A faint sweetness lingers from roasted roots eaten earlier. The night wind moves through grass with a dry whisper. Somewhere far away, an animal calls, and the sound travels cleanly under the stars. The camp stills, but it does not become empty. A person shifts, another coughs. A baby stirs and is soothed by a hand before waking fully. Above it all, the sky remains patient. One intriguing clue from later prehistory is that people eventually marked bones, stones, and cave walls with repeating lines or notches that some researchers interpret as attempts to track lunar or seasonal cycles. Those famous examples are generally much later than 100,000 years ago, so you must not place them carelessly in this camp. Still, they suggest that the human habit of watching time in nature may have very deep roots. Before written calendars, memory and pattern did the work. There is disagreement among specialists about how far back systematic skywatching goes. Some argue that careful observation of lunar cycles and seasonal stars could have been important very early for mobile foragers planning movement and food gathering. Others warn that the evidence before later symbolic markings is indirect, and that we should not imagine full astronomy where only ordinary observation is needed. Yet ordinary observation, practiced every night for generations, can become extraordinary. You look toward the moon, thin and pale near the horizon. Its light is gentle tonight, not enough to silver the whole camp, but enough to sharpen the edges of stones and sleeping bodies. A brighter moon would make night travel easier, perhaps hunting or gathering too, but it could also reveal human movement to animals. A darker night hides, but also blinds. Light and shadow are never simple gifts. An older person near the fire lifts their head and looks at the sky for a long moment. Their face is lined by flame, their eyes reflecting tiny points of orange. Perhaps they are measuring the night's cold, perhaps they are remembering a season when those stars stood in another part of the sky at dawn. Perhaps they are simply awake, as older people so often are, keeping company with silence while younger bodies sleep. You might wonder what the stars meant to them. Not in a grand, certain way, not a neat mythology written in polished sentences, more gently. Did they see animals in the bright clusters, ancestors, paths, warnings? Did they tell children that certain lights belonged to old hunters, lost relatives, clever birds, or fires beyond the roof of the world? Every human culture known to history has made meaning from the sky in one way or another. It would be strange if these people looked up all their lives and saw nothing but dots. The fire snaps, and a shower of sparks rises toward the stars. For a second, the sparks and stars resemble one another. Near fire and distant fire, brief life and ancient light. The people here cannot know that some stars are suns. They cannot know that the light entering their eyes began its journey long before their grandparents were born. But they do know wonder. Even if they have no word you can translate. A child wakes and begins to fuss. The adult beside them hums, low and steady. The sound blends with the night insects and the soft movement of ash settling in the hearth. The child quiets. You are reminded that the sky, for all its vastness, is watched from small human places, from beside a mother's arm, from under a hide blanket, from a camp where someone must remember to feed the fire. The stars also help hold direction. A person who travels far from camp needs landmarks. Wind, rivers, slopes, and perhaps the sky. Later, peoples across the world became skilled celestial navigators, using stars, sun, moon, and horizon points to cross deserts, oceans, and plains for this early band. You can only imagine modest versions of that skill, but even modest sky knowledge matters. The place where dawn appears shifts with the seasons. The height of certain stars changes through the year. The night teaches anyone who looks long enough. You breathe with the camp, inhale smoke and cold, exhale into darkness. The ground beneath you is old, but not silent. It holds footprints, ash, dropped flakes, seeds, bones, and the soft pressure of sleeping bodies above you. The heavens move too slowly to see, yet they are moving. Perhaps this is another part of becoming truly human, not simply looking at what is needed, but looking beyond need, seeing the moon and planning by it. Yes, seeing stars and finding direction. Yes, but also lying awake beneath them and feeling the mind stretch outward. Past the fire, past the ridge, past the known valley, into questions no hand can hold. The flames sink lower, the stars sharpen one by one, voices fade. The camp becomes a small ring of warmth under an ocean of night, and you lie there with them, watching the sky that watched the first humans learn to wonder. Before sunrise, The camp is already thinking about movement. No one says it in a way you can fully understand, yet you feel it in the small adjustments of the morning. A bundle is tightened. A hide is shaken clean of dust. A tool is inspected, then tucked close to other useful things. Someone lifts a child who is still mostly asleep. The child's head heavy on an adult's shoulder, hair smelling faintly of smoke. The fire is fed just enough to warm the last food and preserve a few embers, but not enough to invite anyone to settle for long. You watch the eastern sky turn pale, and you sense that this place, which felt like the whole world last night, is only one stop in a much larger pattern. The band has rested here, cooked here, taught children here, watched stars here, and marked skin with red ochre here. But the land does not stay generous in one spot forever. Food thins, water shifts, animals move, seasons change. So people move too. The broader setting matters. Around 100,000 years ago, Homo sapiens lived in Africa and, in some periods, had begun moving beyond it into nearby regions of Southwest Asia. These early movements were not one tidy march into the future. Human dispersal happened in waves, pauses, returns, failures, and later expansions. Climate opened routes, then closed them. Coastlines changed, deserts softened, then hardened again. The map of the world breathed slowly, and human feet followed its breath. You join the group as they leave the shelter behind. They do not abandon it carelessly. A few objects remain because they are too heavy, too broken, or not needed. Stones circle the hearth. Ash lies pale in the centre. Branches lean where they were placed. Someone may return here, or someone related to them, or no one at all. Camps in this world can be temporary without being meaningless. A place can matter even when you do not build walls around it. The morning air is cool and tastes faintly of dust. Grass brushes against legs. The light reveals footprints, some human, some animal, already crossing and blurring together. A young person carries a bundle of stone flakes wrapped in hide. Another carries roots from yesterday. Someone has the ochre tucked carefully away. You remember aimed the hand in the afternoon, sun. And now that same red earth travels with the group like a pocket of memory. An interesting trace of ancient movement comes from stone tools and raw materials found far from their geological sources. When archaeologists identify rock carried across long distances, it suggests that early people either travelled widely, returned to known places, or exchanged materials with others. A piece of stone can tell a story of movement even after the feet that carried it have vanished. It's not exactly a postcard, but it is doing its best. The band walks along the valley edge, where the ground is firmer and the view wider. No road lies ahead, yet the route feels known. The older adults glance at landmarks with recognition. A split tree, a slope of pale stone, a bend where water once pooled, a distant ridge shaped like the back of a sleeping animal. These are not scenery, they are instructions. There is still lively disagreement about the earliest journeys of Homo sapiens beyond Africa. Some researchers emphasize archaeological finds in places such as the Levant that show early human presence outside Africa around this broad period. Others point out that these early populations may not have led directly to all later humans outside Africa, and that the major successful expansion came later. The story is not a straight arrow. It is more like smoke drifting from a fire, separating, fading, gathering again. You move with them through the morning. The children are quieter than usual, perhaps sensing the seriousness of travel. One complains softly and is given something to chew. Another stumbles, then pretends it was intentional. A young adult smiles but does not laugh too loudly. On a travelling day, energy is saved. The land changes as you walk. The damp valley gives way to drier ground. Low shrubs scrape against hide coverings. The smell of water fades. replaced by sun-warmed dust and resin from broken stems. Insects rise in brief glittering clouds. A bird runs ahead rather than flying, making the whole business seem unnecessarily dramatic. Movement is not only about food, it is about information. A travelling group learns where animals have gone, where plants are ripening, where water remains, where stone can be found, where another group may have passed. The world is read by walking through it. Today you might check a map app and complain when it sends you down a strange side street. Here, the map is made fresh with every journey, corrected by every season. At midday, the band rests in a patch of shade beside a scatter of stones. The ground is warm now. People drink sparingly from a carried container or from water found nearby, depending on what the landscape offers. A child falls asleep almost instantly against a folded hide. Adults sit with their backs to rocks, scanning the distance even while resting. Safety and rest are not opposites here. They share the same body. Someone takes out a shell ornament and checks the cord. It is a small, careful act. The shell may have travelled farther than anyone in the group today. Perhaps it came from a coast, perhaps from a river, perhaps through hands of people whose faces are now only memory. Objects can move farther than stories, or stories farther than objects. Often they travel together. A quiet clue from ancient coastal and inland sites is that early humans made use of varied routes and environments. Coasts could offer shellfish, fish, birds, plants, and easier travel along shorelines. Inland routes followed rivers, lakes, grasslands, and animal migrations. The idea of a single kind of prehistoric life is too narrow. Humans became adaptable partly because they learned many landscapes, not just one. The group rises again when the shadows begin to lengthen. The pace is steady, not hurried. A person at the front watches the ground. Another stays near the rear with the slower walkers. The arrangement shifts when terrain changes. On open ground, they spread. In brush, they draw closer at a narrow crossing. They wait while each person passes. Cooperation is not announced. It is simply performed. You notice how the earlier sections of your journey travel with you. The toolmaker's flakes hang in a bundle. The elder's memory guides the route. The children's learning continues with every step. The fire survives as embers carried or remembered. The ochre moves in a small pouch. The night sky, now invisible in daylight, will return to measure the evening. A thing is left behind completely. As afternoon softens, the band reaches a rise overlooking a new hollow. There is shade below, perhaps water, perhaps old shelter, perhaps a place known from another season. The adults pause. They look, listen, smell the air. A breeze rises from the hollow, cooler than the surrounding land. Someone makes a low sound of recognition. You feel the long human habit of arrival. Not arrival forever, not settlement in the later village sense, just arrival enough to set down bundles, enough to clear a hearth, enough to decide whether the place can hold them for a night. And as they descend toward the hollow, you understand that becoming human also meant becoming a creature of horizons, not restless for no reason, not wandering without thought, but able to imagine a place beyond the ridge and then walk towards it together. The first shelter is behind you now, the next fire waits ahead. The hollow accepts the travellers quietly. By late afternoon, the band has settled beneath a line of trees where the ground dips away from the wind. The place is not perfect, because the deep past does not seem especially interested in perfection. But it is good enough. There is shelter from one side, dry wood nearby, and signs that water can be reached before dark. Bundles are lowered. A child sits down with the sudden seriousness of someone whose legs have completed their contract for the day. The adults begin the familiar work of turning a place into a camp. You stand at the edge of the hollow and listen. The land sounds different here. Leaves move overhead with a fuller whisper than the scrub near the old shelter. Insects hum in a softer cloud somewhere below. Water ticks over stone. Not a stream exactly, more like a patient seep gathering itself. The air smells of shade, damp bark, crushed plants, and the old smoke carried in everyone's hair and hide. This part of the journey asks you to widen the circle. These Homo sapiens are not alone in the deep human world. Around 100,000 years ago, other kinds of humans also live across parts of Africa, Europe, and Asia, depending on the region and the shifting climate. Neanderthals occupy much of Europe and Western Asia. Other human relatives, including Denisovans, are known from genetic evidence and a small number of fossils in Asia. The family tree is less like a clean ladder and more like a tangled woodland path, which is very rude of it, but also far more interesting. As evening approaches, the camp grows alert in a way you have not quite felt before. It is not panic. No one bolts upright or reaches for a weapon in theatrical fashion. Instead, there is a shared sharpening of attention. A person at the edge of camp notices something on the ground, then calls softly. Others look over. You follow. Near a patch of exposed soil lies a footprint, not fresh enough to alarm, but clear enough to matter. It is human-like, broad at the front, pressed deeper at the heel. Perhaps it belongs to someone from another Homo sapiens group. Perhaps to people not quite like these people. You cannot know. Neither can they with certainty. Maybe, but they notice. They study the print, the direction, the age of it. Someone looks toward the trees beyond the hollow. Ancient human landscapes were shared landscapes. Neanderthals and Homo sapiens overlapped in parts of Western Asia at different times, and later genetic evidence shows that they interbred. Most people alive outside Africa today carry a small percentage of Neanderthal ancestry, a quiet biological reminder that the story of humanity includes meetings across difference. Not every meeting had to be dramatic. Some may have been tense, some ordinary, some intimate, some brief as tracks crossing in dust. The fire is started with care. Smoke rises beneath the trees, touching leaves before drifting sideways. The smell becomes familiar again, comforting but also signalling presence. Fire announces a camp. Light says, "We are here." In a world with other human groups, that message can be useful, risky, or both. A young adult brings in dry branches and places them near the hearth. The toolmaker sorts flakes. The elder sits with eyes half closed. But you notice that their head turns whenever someone speaks near the footprint. They may remember others, a group seen in a dry season, a place avoided, a trade made, a conflict softened by distance, a shared water source. Human memory keeps maps of people as well as land. One small but striking scientific detail comes from DNA, not stone. Denisovans were first identified largely through genetic material from a finger bone found in Denisova Cave in Siberia, along with later fossil and genetic discoveries. For a whole kind of ancient human to step into modern knowledge through such tiny remains feels almost dreamlike. A finger bone, a tooth, a finger, a trace in living genomes. And suddenly the old world has another neighbour. There is still disagreement about how often different human groups met and what those meetings were like. Some experts picture rare encounters spread over large territories. Others suggest more complex patterns of contact. Competition, exchange, avoidance, and interbreeding across thousands of years. The evidence is fragmentary, so the past does not give you a clear scene. It gives you footprints near the hollow, stone tools in different styles, bones in caves, and genes still whispering inside living bodies. You settle near the fire as night begins to rise from the ground. The people speak more softly now. A child senses the tension and moves closer to an adult. The adult places a hand on the child's shoulder without looking down. Beyond the firelight, the trees are dark columns. Their leaves catch the last glow of day and then lose it. Shadows thicken. Imagine, gently, that another group once passed through this place, not monsters, not strangers from a fantasy tale. People, though perhaps with different bodies, different faces, different accents of gesture and sound. Perhaps they were Neanderthals, if this is a region where paths could overlap. Perhaps they were another band of Homo sapiens. Perhaps the footprint belongs to someone with ornaments of their own, tools of their own, memories of their own elders and fires. The thought is quiet but powerful. Humanity was not always alone with itself. The world once held multiple human ways of being. Different hands made tools, different voices sounded under the same stars, different children learned the edges of fire. The deep past was populated by relatives, not all ancestors, but neighbours in the larger human story. Around the hearth, food is divided, the cooked roots from yesterday are reheated, and the smell of smoke and starch softens the tension. Someone cracks a seed with a stone, someone checks a wooden point. The ordinary tasks return because even in uncertain places, people must eat, warm themselves, and prepare to sleep. History often turns on such plain needs. The body has a way of asking for dinner even when the mind is busy considering the mysteries of evolution. You notice the shell ornament again, lying briefly in someone's palm. Its surface glints in the firelight. Could objects like this have marked identity when groups met? Could pigment, beads, hairstyles, or scar patterns have said who belongs with whom? Many researchers think ornaments may have helped signal social information, though exact meanings are lost. It is easy to imagine why such signals mattered. When the world contains other groups, recognition can make all the difference. A sound comes from the trees, everyone stills. It is small, a branch settling, perhaps, a night animal moving through leaves. The silence that follows is deep enough to hear the fire consuming itself. Then an older adult exhales and returns to their work. The camp relaxes 1 degree. Not completely, just enough. You feel no need to turn this into danger. That would be too easy and too loud. The more interesting truth is quieter. These people live with awareness that others may be beyond the next ridge, drinking from another seep, carrying another memory of the same moon. They may never meet tonight. They may have met before. They may meet years from now through descendants whose names no one here can imagine. The stars appear between branches. The firelight paints the tree trunks amber. A child falls asleep with one hand still clutching a pebble. The elder watches the dark, face unreadable, and you sit with the knowledge that being human was once a shared experiment, tried in more than one form. Homo sapiens would one day be the only surviving human species, but not yet, not here, not under this ancient sky. For now, the night belongs to many kinds of people, and somewhere beyond the fire, another human presence may be passing quietly through the dark. The night in the hollow is colder than the night before. You feel it first in the silence. Cold has a way of quieting things. Insects fade. Leaves move less. Even the fire seems to speak in smaller sounds. A low crackle rather than a cheerful snap. The people gather closer to the hearth, shoulders wrapped in hides, knees drawn up, hands open toward the warmth. Beyond the camp, the trees stand dark and still, their trunks holding the last memory of daylight. This new place offers shelter, but shelter is not the same as comfort. The wind slides through gaps in branches and finds the back of the neck with impressive dedication. A child whimpers in sleep, and an adult pulls a hide higher over the small body. Someone shifts a stack of branches to block a draft. Another person drags a bundle closer to the fire, not too close, because sparks have opinions, but close enough to warm. The Ice Age world was never one single frozen scene. Many regions shifted between cooler and warmer, wetter and drier periods, and people had to respond to local conditions rather than a neat global label. In some places, shelter meant caves or rock overhangs. In others, it meant windbreaks made from branches, hides, brush, grass, bones, or whatever the land provided. The basic need was the same everywhere. Keep bodies warm, keep children dry, keep tools and food usable, make the night survivable. You watch as 2 adults work near the edge of the hollow, building up a rough screen against the wind. One drives branches into the ground at an angle. Another weaves thinner sticks between them. Dry grass is pressed into gaps, and a hide is stretched across the inner side. Nothing about it looks permanent, but permanence is not the goal. Tonight is the goal in a mobile life. A shelter may only need to last long enough to matter. Archaeological evidence from deep prehistory shows humans repeatedly used caves, rock shelters, and open-air camps, adapting their sleeping and working spaces to climate, season, and available materials in later Ice Age contexts. Some groups built impressive structures using mammoth bones and hides. Though those examples are much younger and belong to different times and places, still, they remind you that human shelter making has always been creative, local, and practical. The smell of the shelter changes as the windbreak grows. Freshly broken branches release a green, bitter scent. Dry grass smells dusty and sweet. Hide smells smoky, animal, and warm from hands. The ground beneath the shelter is uneven, but someone spreads plant matter and old hide scraps to soften it. Not luxury, just insulation. A small distance between skin and cold earth can feel like mercy. One detail often overlooked is how much prehistoric comfort depended on materials that rarely survive. Wood rots, grass decays, hides vanish, fibres disappear unless conditions are unusually kind. This means the archaeological record can make ancient life look stonier than it really was. Stone tools survive and shout for attention, while blankets, mats, backs, cords, windbreaks, and soft bedding mostly slip away. The past may have been warmer, softer, and more textured than the surviving objects suggest. You sit with the people as they arrange themselves inside the protected space. The oldest person is given a place near the heat, but not in the smoke. A limping adult settles where the ground is flattest. Children are tucked between warmer bodies. The arrangement is practical, but it also reveals care. People know who gets cold quickly, who coughs near smoke, who rolls too close to embers, who needs help lying down. Community is partly the memory of everyone's inconveniences. There is some uncertainty among specialists about how elaborate shelters were at different points in early Homo sapiens history. Some argue that simple windbreaks and natural shelters would have been enough in many climates. Others suggest that portable structures, hide coverings, and bedding may have been more common than the evidence can easily prove. The absence of preserved materials does not mean absence of skill. It may only mean that time is very good at cleaning up after itself. A young adult adds stones near the fire, arranging them in a loose curve. Heated stones can hold warmth after flames sink low, and stones around a hearth also help contain embers. Whether every stone area is placed for heat, safety, or habit, the effect is comforting. The circle of fire becomes more defined, a glowing centre in a handmade room without walls. You think of modern bedrooms, with sealed windows, thick blankets, thermostats, and the slightly dramatic act of complaining when the room is 1 degree too warm. Here, temperature is not adjusted by a quiet machine. It is negotiated with branches, hides, ash, body heat, and timing. Sleep depends on preparation. Comfort is made by hand. Outside, the wind presses against the new screen. It rustles but holds. A few children look toward it, listening. One adult makes a soft, reassuring sound, another begins humming under the breath, perhaps to soothe the youngest or perhaps simply to occupy the dark. The hum blends with the fire and the wind until the whole shelter seems to breathe. The toolmaker checks a wooden shaft by firelight. The surface has been smoothed and one end is darkened from hardening near heat. A stone point may be attached later with binding and adhesive. Warmth helps not only bodies, but tools. Fire can dry wood, cure materials, and make work possible when the air turns damp. A shelter is not only where people sleep, It's where the group protects the conditions for tomorrow. The elder gestures toward a gap in the windbreak. A younger person notices, rises, and stuffs more grass into it. No lecture is needed. The old eyes have seen what the young hands can fix. The camp grows a little warmer. The child nearest the gap stops shifting and settles deeper into sleep. You notice the layers of sound inside the shelter. Fire clicking, grass whispering under pressure, hide creaking as someone turns, breath rising and falling, a low murmur between two adults discussing, perhaps, whether the group should remain here another day. The sounds are small, but together they form a kind of house. Not a house of timber or stone, but a house of repeated care. Another practical detail survives through studies of ancient hearths and sleeping areas. At some sites, patterns of ash, stone tools, bones, and burned materials suggest that people organize space around fires, with areas for cooking, toolmaking, sleeping, or refuse. This kind of spatial planning does not require architecture in the later sense. It only requires people who know that life becomes easier when things have places. The wind eases after a while. Stars show through the branches above the shelter. The fire sinks, but the stones hold warmth. Someone covers part of the embers with ash, preserving them for morning. The movement is slow and practiced, like tucking in a difficult but beloved animal. You lie near the others, feeling the handmade barrier between human warmth and the cold outside. It is not perfect. Smoke still stings the eyes. The ground is still hard. The night still belongs mostly to the dark, but within this small protected space, bodies soften, shoulders lower, children sleep, injured foot rests, older hands stop trembling. And you understand that shelter is more than a roof. It is planning made visible. It is memory arranged against the wind. It is the decision to shape a small pocket of safety in a world that does not provide one automatically. The fire glows under ash, the windbreak holds, the camp sleeps inside its fragile warmth. Morning comes with a quiet mist in the hollow. It gathers low over the ground, pale and thin, turning grass tips silver and softening the outlines of trees. The wind has faded. The shelter that felt so fragile in the night now looks calmer, almost ordinary, with its bent branches, tucked grass, and smoke-darkened hide. A small fire breathes under ash, waiting for hands to wake it. You rise with the camp as people unfold from sleep. Hides are shaken, children are nudged awake, someone coughs into a fist. Someone else stretches slowly, joints stiff from the cold ground. The old person remains seated a little longer near the hearth, watching the morning light enter the hollow. Today, the camp is quieter, not fearful, not hurried, just held in a different kind of attention. Near the edge of the trees, a small group gathers around a place in the ground where the soil has been disturbed. You approach carefully. There are no grand monuments here, no carved stones, no inscriptions promising eternal memory, only earth, hands, silence, and the faint scent of damp soil. The deep past gives us only partial traces of how early humans treated death, loss, and memory, but by roughly this broad period. Some human groups and close human relatives were placing bodies in deliberate ways, sometimes in caves or sheltered places, and later evidence shows increasing care with burials, pigments, ornaments, and objects. Interpreting these traces is difficult. A body placed carefully in the ground can mean grief, hygiene, protection from scavengers, ritual, memory, or several of these at once. You watch as one adult smooths soil with the side of a hand. Another sets a small stone near the disturbed place. The stone is not large. It does not announce itself. It is simply chosen. A child tries to move closer, but an older sibling holds them back. The child does not understand, or understands only that the adults are different today. The air is cold enough that breath shows faintly. Birds call from the trees, indifferent and beautiful, somewhere behind you. The fire crackles as another person wakes it fully. The ordinary life of camp continues, but softened, as if every sound has been wrapped in hide. One of the clearest signs of a changing human mind comes from the care shown to the dead. Sites associated with early Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, and later ancient peoples include possible burials and intentional body placement. The details are often debated because natural processes can disturb remains, and because human intention does not fossilize neatly. Still, the repeated attention to bodies after death suggests that the dead were not always treated as mere objects left behind. A small, easily missed detail belongs to this morning's scene. Red ochre has been found in some later prehistoric burials and symbolic contexts, and even when it appears earlier, its meaning is not always clear. Pigment may have marked bodies, objects, or places, but it also may have served practical purposes. When you see a faint red stain on a stone or in soil, you're seeing something that might be ceremony, craft, accident, or all of them tangled together. The past does enjoy making scholars squint. The young adult with ochre-stained fingers from the earlier day stands near the disturbed ground. They hold a small amount of red paste, much less than before. After a long pause, they touch it to a stone and make one mark. A simple mark. No pattern you can read, no symbol that opens itself to you. Just colour against stone or red against grey, warmth against cold. You feel how careful the moment is. No one explains it. No one needs to. There remains real disagreement among archaeologists about when ritual behaviour began in a clear sense. Some argue that deliberate burial, pigment use, ornaments, and repeated gestures point to symbolic or spiritual life very early. Others urge caution, noting that practical reasons can produce similar traces and that later belief should not be projected too far back. The word ritual itself is heavy. It can make a small human gesture sound overly formal. Perhaps, here, you should begin with something simpler. People remembered, people cared, people did something because doing nothing was not enough. A woman kneels and places a piece of worked bone near the stone. Another person gently removes it and returns it to her hand, perhaps correcting the act, perhaps deciding the object is too useful, perhaps because the gesture is not the right one. The woman lowers her gaze, then holds the bone close. The exchange is quiet. Even grief had practical limits in a world where every tool matters. You hear a child whisper or murmur behind you. An adult answers softly. The child asks again. The answer is longer this time. Maybe the adult explains death. Maybe they tell where the person has gone. Maybe they say the name. Maybe they say nothing that abstract. Only that this one will not rise, will not eat, will not walk with them when the camp moves. To a child, that may be mystery enough. The disturbed soil smells rich and wet. When a hand presses it down, the ground darkens briefly with moisture. A fly circles, then disappears toward the trees. The morning sun begins to touch the upper branches, and droplets fall from leaves with soft ticks. You think back to the elder beside the fire, the child at their knee, the hand resting on hair. You think of the limping adult given space near warmth. You think of the fire kept through the night for bodies that needed it. Care for the living and care for the dead may not be separate instincts. Both say that a person is more than their immediate usefulness. Both say that absence matters. In modern life, people build cemeteries, write names in stone, light candles, keep photographs, save voicemails, and place flowers in water because memory asks for form. Here, there are no photographs, no carved names, no quiet funeral music playing from a speaker someone forgot to charge. There is only touch, earth, colour, stone, and the silence of a group that knows someone is missing. A person begins a low hum. It may be mourning. It may be comfort. It may be a sound made because silence is too wide. Another voice joins briefly, then fades. The sound does not rise into song, but it holds the group together for a few breaths. The fire behind you crackles in answer. The old person finally standing, helped by a younger adult. They move toward the disturbed ground and pause. Their face is hard to read. Perhaps they knew the dead longer than anyone else here. Perhaps the person buried was young, old, kin, companion, child, hunter, gatherer, storyteller, maker of a favourite tool, or someone whose laugh had a shape others still expected to hear. Archaeology cannot tell you that part. It can give you bones, it cannot give you the missed laugh. The elder bends with difficulty, picks up a small pinch of soil, and lets it fall back. That is all. It is almost nothing. It is enough. The camp remains still for a little longer. Then, slowly, life resumes. Someone tends the fire. Someone lifts a bundle. A child is given food. A tool must be repaired. Water must be found. The dead are remembered, but the living are hungry. And hunger is not disrespectful. It is the body continuing. As the sun rises higher, the red mark on the stone dries darker. You know it may not last. Rain may wash it, wind may cover it. Animals may scatter the soil. Time may erase every trace except perhaps a stain, a bone, a stone out of place, a question for future archaeologists. But for this morning, in this hollow, the gesture holds, and you understand that becoming human may have meant learning not only how to live together, but how to pause together when a life ended. The camp breathes again, the mist lifts, the marked stone waits in the morning light. By late afternoon, the hollow has become a place of softer sounds. The morning's solemn quiet has not vanished, but it has loosened. People have eaten a little. Water has been fetched. Tools have been checked. Children, who are often better than adults at letting life return, have begun to move through the camp again with cautious curiosity. The red-marked stone remains near the edge of the trees, but the fire is alive, and where fire lives. Work and breath and small human noises gather. You sit beside the hearth as the sun lowers through branches. The light is honey-coloured now, touching the tops of heads, the edges of hides, the pale smoke rising from the flames. A child taps two sticks together, softly at first, then with a steadier rhythm. Tap, tap, pause, tap, tap, pause. Another child answers by striking a hollow piece of wood with a pebble. The sound is dull and warm, like a tiny drum that has not yet received the confidence of being called a drum. No one stops them. Instead, an adult looks over and listens. Das ist. Music, in this world, does not need a stage. It does not need polished instruments, written notes, tickets, curtains, or someone in the audience opening a snack wrapper at exactly the quietest moment. Sound begins with bodies and materials. Hands clap, stones click, feet stamp, voices hum, breath moves through bone, reed, shell, or cupped hands. Rhythm can organize work, soothe children, mark memory, guide movement, and pull a group into one shared pulse. The deeper record of prehistoric music is difficult because most early instruments were made from materials that decay: wood, skin, plant fibre, and many simple sound makers disappear easily. Later in the archaeological record, especially in Ice Age Europe, carved bone and ivory flutes show that humans were making instruments tens of thousands of years ago. Those finds are younger than this camp, but they open a window onto a capacity that may have roots much deeper than the objects that survive. The child taps again, the rhythm wobbles, then steadies. A woman nearby begins to scrape a hide in time with it. Perhaps accidentally at first. Scrape, tap, scrape, tap. The work sound becomes almost musical. Another adult hums under the breath, low and warm, not quite a song, not quite speech, The hum seems to settle over the camp like another hide laid gently across the shoulders. You feel the rhythm in the ground before you think about it. This is one of the strange powers of repeated sound. It enters the body and makes separate people aware of the same moment. A group can walk together, work together, mourn together, or calm a frightened child through rhythm. The mind relaxes when it can predict the next beat. Sleep itself likes rhythm, breath, heart, footsteps, waves, fire. A small overlooked clue from ancient life is that many ordinary tools can also make sound. A hollow bone, a scraped rib, a stretched hide, a stone struck against another stone. Even hands on the chest or thigh can become instruments. Archaeologists must be cautious when identifying music, because a pierced bone may be a tool, a whistle, an ornament, or a piece damaged by nature. Still, the possibility reminds you that music may have lived first in simple, perishable, everyday things. A young adult picks up a length of hollow reed or bone and blows across it experimentally. The first sound is mostly air. The second is worse. A thin squeak that causes one child to laugh and another to cover their ears with great drama. The young adult smiles, adjusts the angle, and tries again. This time a soft tone appears, breathy and wavering, like wind caught in a narrow place. The camp listens, only for a moment. Then people return to their tasks, but the sound has changed the air. It has made everyone look up together. That, too, is power. The question of when music began remains open. Some scientists link music to courtship, group bonding, emotional expression, mother-infant soothing, or ritual. Others suggest that rhythm and melody may have grown from older capacities shared with speech, movement, and social coordination. The evidence cannot choose one answer for us. It is quite possible that music did not begin for one reason. Humans rarely do anything for any one reason, especially if it involves making noise. The hum returns, this time from the older woman near the fire. Her voice is thin but steady. She hums 3 tones, pauses, then repeats them. The pattern is simple enough for a child to copy. One child does, softly. Another joins with a version that is not quite the same. The elder does not correct them. Perhaps variation is allowed. Perhaps exactness does not matter. Perhaps this is not a teaching song at all, only a sound to ease the evening after a hard morning. The firelight deepens as the sun drops. Smoke smells stronger in the cooling air. The hides give off their warm animal scent. Someone turns roasted roots near the embers, and their sweet earthiness mixes with ash. A person tapping sticks slows the rhythm till it matches the elder's hum. Tap, hum, tap, hum. The camp seems to settle around the sound. You think of modern lullabies, different languages, different melodies, the same basic magic, a quiet voice saying, "The world is large, but you are held." Parents have hummed to children in palaces, apartments, boats, deserts, fields, and crowded train stations. Here, under branches 100,000 years ago, the purpose feels just as clear. Child leans against an adult and stops fidgeting. The body believes the rhythm before the mind understands it. Another person begins a soft clapping pattern. Not loud. Nothing here breaks the calm. The palms meet with a dry, warm sound. A younger adult answers with clicks of stone, careful not to use a sharp flake. Someone gives a mock warning glance toward the children, as if to say, "No, we are not turning the entire camp into a percussion disaster." The children, predictably, consider this an invitation. For a few moments, the hollow is full of layered sound. Fire crackle, hide scrape, stick tap, low hum, child laughter, breath through hollow bone. It is not a performance, it is not separate from life, it is life becoming audible. Some traces from later prehistory show instruments made with remarkable care, including flutes with finger holes that could produce varied tones. Such objects prove that by the Upper Paleolithic, humans had turned breath into crafted music. Whether the people beside you have anything so refined is unknown, and you should not pretend certainty. But their bodies have rhythm, their voices have pitch, their hands have timing, the ingredients are here, waiting in plain sight. The elder's hum fades. The child continues for 2 more notes, then stops, suddenly shy. An adult smiles into the fire. Another person pokes the embers, sending sparks upward into the darkening air. The first stars appear, and for a second the sparks seem to answer them, rising like tiny golden notes that vanish before reaching the branches. You feel the camp's mood change again. The morning's grief has not been erased. It has been carried into sound. That is another thing music can do. It does not remove what hurts. It gives the group a way to breathe around it. A rhythm can hold sadness without making it heavier. A hum can let memory rest beside warmth. Night gathers. The tapping slows. The hollow bone is set down. Children nestle into hides. Adults speak in lower voices. The fire takes over the rhythm, crackling steadily, unevenly, beautifully. And you understand that becoming human may have included this quiet discovery. Breath can become comfort. Rhythm can become belonging. And sound can make a circle feel less alone in the dark. The last hum fades into the smoke. The fire keeps time. The next morning begins with traces left by others. You notice them before the camp fully wakes. Not a person, not a voice, not a face appearing between the trees. Only signs. A few broken stems near the lower path. A faint heel mark in damp soil. A small scatter of stone flakes beside an old hearth some distance from the hollow. The ash there is cold. Whoever sat here has already moved on. The band notices too. They gather around the old hearth in the slanting morning light. Alert but calm. The fire pit is shallow, ringed by stones darker than the surrounding ground. One adult crouches and touches the ash, rubbing it between finger and thumb. Another examines the stone flakes. The toolmaker lifts one and turns it toward the sun. It is made from a material slightly different from the stone you have seen in this group's own bundle. Finer grained, darker, perhaps from a source far away. In a world without shops, coins, caravans, or those little receipts that somehow become trash immediately, objects still travel, stone moves, shells move, ochre moves, stories move, people carry things when they have value, and sometimes they exchange them when paths cross. The exchange may be direct, hand to hand, or indirect, passed along from group to group until an object travels farther than any one person. Archaeological evidence from the Middle Stone Age and later periods that shows that raw materials were sometimes transported over considerable distances. Obsidian, fine stone, shells, pigments, and other items found away from their natural sources suggest movement, planning, and in some cases exchange networks. The exact scale varies by region and time, but the message is clear enough. Early humans were not sealed inside tiny worlds. Their connections could stretch across landscapes. You follow as the toolmaker compares the unfamiliar flake with one of their own. The edge catches light. The maker tests it gently against wood, then nods once. Useful. A young person leans closer, curious. The flake is not magical. It is simply good stone. And good stone matters. When you live by cutting, scraping, piercing, and shaping, the quality of raw material can change the work of a whole day. A quiet detail from archaeological studies is that some prize materials appear to have travelled through repeated social contact rather than only through long individual journeys. In other words, an object might pass from one group to another, like a whispered message. By the time it arrives far from its source, it carries not only usefulness but also a history of meetings. The stone does not speak, but its distance does. The group does not take everything from the old hearth. That is interesting. They inspect, select, leave. Perhaps some flakes are too poor. Perhaps there are customs about what can be taken. Perhaps the makers may return. Perhaps no one wants to carry extra weight. Mobile life is a ruthless editor. Every object asks to be justified. Someone places a small shell near the old hearth. Not the valued ornament you've seen before, but a simpler shell or broken piece carried from another place. The gesture is subtle. It might be discard. It might be exchange. It might be a message. You cannot know, but you notice that an older person watches closely, then gives no sign of disapproval. The meaning of such exchanges is still difficult to pin down. Some archaeologists read transported materials and ornaments as signs of broad social networks, perhaps useful for marriage ties, alliances, information sharing, or group identity. Others are careful to separate direct evidence from possibility, reminding us that movement of objects can happen in many ways. The ancient world did not leave labels saying, "Traded politely after lunch, very inconsiderate." Really, by midday, the band follows a path toward higher ground. The route may lead to a place where stone can be found, or perhaps to a meeting place remembered from earlier seasons. The air grows dry as you climb. Dust lifts under feet. Thorny shrubs scrape softly against hide coverings. The sun warms the back of your neck. Insects buzz near your ears with the persistence of creatures who have clearly misunderstood personal boundaries. At the top of the rise, the view opens wide, valleys fold into one another. A ribbon of trees marks water in the distance. Beyond that, hills blur blue in heat. Somewhere out there are other fires, other hands, other children learning not to touch flames, other elders holding maps in memory. The thought makes the world feel larger and more intimate at once. The group pauses near a scatter of exposed rock. The toolmaker kneels and strikes a piece experimentally. The sound is sharp and clean. Another strike produces a thin flake. This place is good. People begin selecting pieces. Not too many, only what can be carried. A child tries to lift a stone far too large for them and fails with great dignity. An adult gently replaces it with a smaller one. Ambition is ancient, so is being handed a more reasonable rock. You sit in the shade while the group works. The smell of fresh stone dust mingles with hot grass. A breeze moves over the ridge, carrying distant scents you cannot name. Someone takes out the ochre and marks a chosen stone with a faint smear. Perhaps to identify it, perhaps to test the surface, perhaps because red makes even practical work feel chosen. Objects like jadrul shells and pigments may have helped people recognize social ties beyond immediate family. A bead, a colour, a style of toolmaking, or a repeated mark could say something like, "These are my people," or "I have come from that coast," or "I know the ones you know." No one can translate those messages now, but in a landscape of small, scattered groups. Being able to recognize connection may have mattered as much as recognizing tracks in mud. Late in the afternoon, the band descends from the ridge with heavier bundles. The pace is slower. A young adult adjusts the load across one shoulder. Another person takes a few pieces from them without discussion. Weight is shared when it must be. No one makes a speech about teamwork, which is always a mercy. The action is enough. As evening approaches, they pass the old hearth again. The shell left there catches the low light. It is still there. No one has come, or someone has come and left it, or the exchange, if it was one, has not yet completed its quiet little journey. The band moves on without knowing, as humans often do. You send things into the world and may never learn where they land. The camp in the hollow receives them with shade and smoke. New stone is set near the toolmaker's place. Children gather to inspect it. The elder touches one piece, then points toward the distant ridge, as if naming its origin for those who will need to remember. The stone is not only material now, it is a location made portable, a journey held in the hand. The fire is built higher as dusk arrives. Food is shared. The day's finds are discussed in low voices. The shell ornament glints at someone's neck. and the new stone waits beside the hearth. Around you, trade, travel, memory, and identity settle into the same circle of light. You understand then that humans became truly human not by living alone in little pockets of survival, but by reaching, cautiously and creatively, beyond the nearest fire. They carried useful things, beautiful things, and perhaps news of water, weather, danger, kin, and possibility. Some connections were as small as a shell left beside cold ash. Some travelled farther than anyone could see. The new stone rests beside the hearth overnight, and by morning it has already become part of the camp's future. You see it in the way the toolmaker touches it before the sun is fully up, not using it yet, only checking it, as if greeting a thought that arrived yesterday and will be needed tomorrow. The air is cool, the fire is low, a few children still sleep beneath hides. Their faces slack with the deep seriousness of early morning dreams. Someone stirs ash from the embers, and a thin flame wakes with a soft sigh. Today. The camp does not move immediately. Instead, people gather close in a way that feels like planning. A bundle is opened, stone pieces are inspected, a wooden shaft is held up and checked for straightness. The elder gestures toward the ridge, then toward the valley, then toward the sky where the sun will climb. The group listens. You have seen them read tracks, gather roots, mark skin, care for the old, and notice the footprints of others. Now you see them doing something more invisible. They're arranging time before it arrives. This is one of the great human gifts, and also, let us be honest, one of our great inconveniences. The mind does not stay politely in the present. It wanders ahead. It imagines hunger before hunger comes, rain before clouds gather, danger before the bushes move. It prepares, worries, hopes, rehearses, and occasionally overthinks a perfectly normal conversation for several days here, in the deep past. That same forward-reaching mind is not a modern nuisance. It is survival. Evidence from early human technology points strongly toward planning. Prepared coarse stone techniques require a maker to shape the stone now in order to remove a desired flake later. Compound tools, where stone points are attached to shafts with bindings and adhesives, require several materials gathered from different places and prepared in sequence. Food gathering, hunting, shelter building, and migration all depend on imagining conditions that have not yet happened. You sit near the toolmaker as they begin shaping one of the new stones. The core is turned slowly in the hands. A striking platform is prepared. A few small flakes are removed, not for immediate use, but to set up the shape for a later blow. The patience of it is almost sleepy. Tap, turn, examine, tap again. The useful flake is still hidden inside the stone, but the maker is already working toward it. A younger learner watches, and this time the lesson is not only about what the hand does, it is about what the mind sees before the hand acts. The toolmaker points to a ridge on the stone, then traces an invisible path with a fingertip. The flake will travel that way, or should. Stone is not always obedient, but the idea comes first. One small clue about ancient planning comes from adhesives. In parts of the Middle Stone Age, people made compound tools using sticky substances such as plant resins, gums, ochre mixtures, or heated materials. Producing reliable adhesive can involve collecting ingredients, controlling heat, and combining materials carefully. It is not the kind of thing one invents casually while half asleep and looking for a snack. It suggests sequence, memory, experimentation, and shared know-how. Nearby, another adult works with a wooden shaft. The end has been shaped and hardened by fire. A groove is scraped near the tip. A binding fibre is twisted and tested. The stone point is not attached yet. Each part waits for the others. You can feel how different this is from grabbing a sharp stone and using it at once. This is future action assembled in advance. The question of when humans develop fully modern forms of future thinking is still open. Many experts see planning deep in the archaeological record. Though they differ over how complex it was and how it changed over time, some emphasize tool-making sequences and long-distance material transport. Others look to symbols, ornaments, and burials as signs of minds working beyond immediate need. The evidence does not speak in a single voice, but it keeps returning to the same quiet theme. These people could imagine what was not yet present. The elder gestures again, now toward the direction of water. A younger adult responds with a sound and emotion that suggests distance. Another person points to a child, then to the shelter. Perhaps the group is deciding who travels and who stays. Perhaps they are planning a hunt, a gathering trip, or a move toward another camp. You cannot translate the conversation, but you can see its structure. Options are held in the mind, routes are compared, people are assigned by ability, age, and need. The morning smells of smoke, dry fibre, warm stone dust, and the faint sweetness of remaining roots. Light enters the hollow at an angle, touching the red mark from the burial stone at the edge of the trees. That mark is darker now, almost brown. It reminds you that memory, too, is a form of future thinking. To remember the dead is to carry them forward. To mark a place is to shape how people will act when they pass it again. A child approaches the planning circle carrying a pebble and places it beside the new stones, clearly contributing. An adult looks down, solemnly examines the pebble, then sets it gently aside. The child seems satisfied. Civic participation has begun. And like many civic processes, the result is symbolic but not entirely useless. There is warmth in that moment, but also instruction. The child watches adults plan. They see that objects are gathered before use, that routes are discussed before walking, that food is shared before hunger becomes conflict. The future is learned socially. A child first experiences tomorrow because adults prepare for it. By midday, a small party leaves camp. You follow them as they walk toward the valley, carrying tools that were chosen in the morning. The sun is bright, the air dry, and the land seems to shimmer. They do not walk at random. They stop where tracks cross. They check the wind. They pause near plants whose roots may be ready after recent damp weather. The planning at the hearth now unfolds across the land. At one point, they find a patch of tubers partly exposed by animal digging. The gatherer smiles, a quick flash of satisfaction. The digging sticks come out. Food is lifted from the earth, brushed clean, and placed into a carrying bundle. The group did not create the patch, but they knew where to look. Knowledge turned chance into expectation. Later, they find signs of animals near a watercourse. The hunters do not act immediately. They study the tracks and the wind. They gesture toward a stand of brush and a narrow path between stones. It may be useful tomorrow, not today. A place is remembered, a possibility is stored. The future grows by one more detail. Modern life is full of artificial futures. Calendars, alarms, weather apps, savings accounts, recipes, reminders, little notes saying buy soap, which you will still forget. Here, the future is carried in bodies and bundles. It is a sharpened point not yet attached. A fire preserved under ash, a remembered water source. A child taught to twist fibre because someday the group will need more cord than the elder can make alone. When the party returns in late light, they bring food and information. The information may matter more. The tubers are useful tonight. The animal path may be useful tomorrow. The wind near the watercourse may matter when the season turns. The group receives these reports around the hearth, faces lit by flame, everyone adding the day to the shared store of what is known. The toolmaker picks up the prepared core one last time before dark. A careful strike lands. A long flake comes free, clean and sharp, almost exactly as planned. The learner exhales audibly, impressed despite trying not to show it. The toolmaker's mouth lifts in a small smile. The flake existed in the mind before it existed in the hand. You watch it catch the firelight, thin and bright along its edge, and you understand that this is one of the places where humanity becomes unmistakable. Not because no other creature plans at all, but because here planning has become social, layered, teachable, and tied to memory. Tools, roots, food, children, elders, symbols, and grief. The fire burns lower. Tomorrow waits beyond the dark, not empty, not certain, but already partly imagined. The evening after the planned journey feels unusually complete, not finished. Exactly. Nothing in this life is ever finished for long. A tool edge dulls, a fire sinks, a child grows hungry again with frankly impressive speed. A path that seemed safe yesterday may hold fresh tracks tomorrow. Still, tonight the camp rests with a kind of gathered quiet. Food has come in. The new flake lies beside the toolmaker. The elder has spoken of roots. Children have learned. Badly and beautifully. The red-marked stone waits near the trees. The fire keeps everyone inside one circle of warmth. You sit where you can see nearly all of them at once. The old person wrapped in hide, the child with dust on one cheek, the young adult with ochre still faintly staining the wrist, the learner who struck a usable flake for the first time, the gatherer who knew where tubers would hide, the one who limps and has been given the flattest place near the heat, the person who hums when the night grows tense, the one who watches the dark, the one who remembers to push a branch into the embers before sleep. This is the section of your journey where the threads begin to come together. Not with a loud declaration, because bedtime history should never sound like someone overturning a table in a lecture hall. More like a blanket being drawn slowly over the day. You've been looking for the moment humans became truly human, and the more you watch, the less it looks like one moment. Biology gave these people modern human bodies, but culture gave those bodies a shared life. By around 100,000 years ago, Homo sapiens had large, flexible brains, skilled hands, complex social bonds, tools, fire, mobility, and, in many places, signs of symbolic behavior beginning to appear or deepen. The exact pace varied across regions. Human becoming was not a swift or it was a long accumulation of abilities, habits, relationships, and meanings. The fire brightens as someone adds dry twigs. Sparks rise, tiny and brief. They vanish into darkness. You remember the first night beside the shelter, when the whole camp seemed held together by smoke and breath. You remember the track-filled mud by the reeds, the waking band and the stone flakes falling in morning light, the roots lifted from the soil, the careful passing of food. Each scene offered one answer, but none alone was enough. A sharp stone is impressive, yes, but a sharp stone taught to a child is more impressive. Fire is powerful, but fire tended through the night for others is more powerful still. Language matters, but language used to comfort. Warn, tease, plan, and remember is where it becomes deeply human. Ochre is only red earth until a hand chooses to carry it, grind it, and mark a body or stone. A burial is only disturbed soil until silence gathers around it. One overlooked clue in the archaeological record is that different signs of human complexity do not appear everywhere at once. Ornaments, pigments, long-distance materials, carefully prepared tools, burials, and artistic objects emerge unevenly across sites and periods. This unevenness tells a gentler story than old ideas of a sudden revolution. Human minds may have been capable of much before conditions, population, contact, and tradition allowed those abilities to leave abundant traces. You look at the shell ornament near the fire. It is small enough to lose in grass, yet it carries distance, choice, perhaps identity. You look at the new stone flake, planned before it broke free. You look at the child sleeping against an adult's thigh, protected by warmth they did not make. You look at the elder, whose memory may guide tomorrow's route long after their steps have slowed. Which one of these is the true sign of humanity? Maybe the answer is yes. There is still no agreement on a single definition of behavioral modernity. Some researchers focus on symbolism and art. Others emphasize language, cumulative culture, long-distance exchange, planning, or social care. Many now prefer to think in terms of gradual mosaics rather than one dramatic threshold. The phrase truly human can be poetic, but nature does not always respect poetry. It tends to work in overlapping changes, awkward transitions, and long grey mornings. The camp, however, gives you a way to feel what the terms cannot quite hold. A woman breaks a roasted root into pieces and gives one to the limping adult, one to a child, one to the elder, then keeps a piece for herself. She does not measure quality with numbers, she measures need with eyes. A young person notices that the firewood pile is low and goes to fetch more before being told. Two children whisper and giggle until an adult makes a soft warning sound. The children settle for 6 breaths, then giggle again, because humanity is not perfect and bedtime has always been a negotiation. The air smells of smoke, roasted starch, warm hide and dust. The hollow is dark beyond the fire, but the circle glows amber. Light trembles across faces, making them seem to appear and disappear with each shift of flame. You hear insects, breath, the scrape of a stone tool being set down, the quiet creak of hide as someone turns. This is not a primitive version of you. It is not a half-formed sketch waiting for cities to make it meaningful. These people do not know agriculture. Writing, metal, mathematics, music notation, shipping routes, law codes, novels, cat videos, or the tiny panic of losing Wi-Fi. But they know hunger, affection, boredom, skill, frustration, humour, memory, pride, grief, planning and care. Their world is different, their humanity is not. You imagine one of them looking forward through time, though of course they cannot. They cannot see villages, pyramids, ships, telescopes, hospitals, library hours, satellites, lullabies recorded on phones, or someone listening under a blanket in the dark while a quiet voice tells them about an ancient fire. Yet the thread runs from here to there, not straight, not simple, but real. What made humans truly human may have been the ability to live in more than one time at once. They remember the dead, they teach the young, they plan tomorrow. They carry stone from yesterday's ridge and they mark bodies for meanings that outlast the moment. They tell, gesture, hum and share so that one mind does not have to hold the whole world alone. The toolmaker hands the planned flake to the learner. The learner holds it carefully, almost reverently, then places it among the tools. The gesture is small, but it holds the entire journey. A thing imagined, made, taught, received and saved. The elder looks toward the dark trees where the red-marked stone rests. The child beside them follows the gaze but does not fully understand. Perhaps one day they will, or perhaps they will remember only that for a while. The camp grew quiet in that direction. Even partial memory matters. It gives the future something to build from. The fire lowers, the group shifts towards sleep. You feel that the answer is not hidden in one invention, one bone, one pigment mark, or one migration route. It is in the weaving. A human is a body, yes, but a human life is a web. Tools, stories, food, care, memory, symbols, movement, sound, and tomorrow all tied together. And in this hollow, 100,000 years before your own night, the web glows softly in firelight. Dawn comes slowly to the hollow, and this time you know it is the last dawn you will spend beside this ancient fire. The sky lightens, first beyond the trees, a grey wash behind black branches. Then the leaves separate from the dark, one by one, each edge becoming visible. The fire is quiet under ash. The people are still sleeping, curled beneath hides and woven plant matter. Their bodies gathered close against the fading cold. Smoke hangs low, faint and blue, carrying the smell of yesterday's warmth into the morning. You sit without moving, as if even your thoughts might disturb them. For many nights now, you have walked through their world. You arrived beside a first shelter and watched embers kept alive. You followed roots without roads, saw hands shape stone, watched roots lifted from the earth, listened to voices before writing, and felt the pull of stars above a camp with no calendar. You saw red ochre stained skin. Children learn by failing, elders guard memory. Mourners mark the ground, and music rise from breath and tapping sticks. Nothing here was loud, nothing needed to be. The people begin to wait. A child stirs first, then presses a cold foot against an adult, who flinches faintly but does not wake fully. This, too, is part of the human story. Not all intimacy is noble. Some of it is a freezing little foot at dawn. Another adult opens their eyes, looks toward the ash-covered fire, and reaches for the branch laid ready beside the hearth. The motion is slow, practiced, and half asleep. The branch is nudged inward. A breath, another breath. A hidden ember brightens. The camp returns. The historical record tells us that Homo sapiens did not become modern through a single clean event that can be circled on a timeline. By 100,000 years ago, humans already carried much of the anatomy, intelligence, skill, and social capacity that would later support art, ritual, technology, trade, migration, and civilization, but the evidence appears unevenly, in fragments spread across landscapes and millennia. Tools survive, pigments survive sometimes, shells, bones, ash, and stone survive. Voices, jokes, lullabies, plans, and glances usually do not. That is why this morning matters in a different way. It lets you imagine the missing softness around the surviving fragments. A stone flake is not only a stone flake, it is a learner watching a teacher. A hearth is not only burned sediment, it is a circle of knees and hands. Ochre is not only mineral, it is a mark chosen by someone who wanted colour to remain, even briefly. A burial is not only bone and soil, it is a silence shared by the living. The fire catches. A small flame curls around dry grass and twigs. Someone blows gently, cheeks hollowing, eyes narrowed against smoke. The flame grows brighter, and the faces around it return from shadow. An older person sits up, wrapped in hide, and coughs softly. A child crawls toward the heat and is caught by the back of the covering before getting too close. The child complains in a low, offended murmur. The adult makes a sound that feels suspiciously like, yes, yes, history's full of disappointments. The hollow fills with mourning work. Hides are shaken, tools are gathered, a stone point is checked. The new flake from yesterday is placed carefully into a bundle. Someone rubs sleep from their face with an ochre-stained hand, leaving a faint red smear near the cheek. Another person notices and smiles. The marked stone near the trees is briefly visited. No one lingers long, but the glance is enough. One small scientific detail follows you into this final morning. Many clues to deep human behavior survive only because they were made of durable materials or altered by fire. Charcoal, heated stone, mineral pigment, shell, and bone can persist where wood, fibre, skin, feathers, spoken words, and woven memories disappear. So when you picture this camp, remember that much of its human richness was made from things time rarely preserves. The past is not silent because people were silent. It is silent because softness decays. The group prepares to leave the hollow. You feel it before anyone steps away. Bundles are tightened, ashes arranged over embers, useful stones are wrapped. Children are given small loads, enough to teach responsibility, not enough to cause a full morning rebellion. The elder is helped to stand, the limping adult tests the ground with careful balance. The youngest child is lifted onto a hip, head already nodding despite the day just beginning. Some people are simply gifted at sleeping through civilization's entire prelude. The question of why Homo sapiens eventually became the only surviving human species remains complex. Climate shifts, population size, technology, social networks, adaptability, and interactions with other human groups all likely played roles. Different specialists weigh those causes differently, and no single answer can hold the whole story. But watching this band, you sense one powerful advantage: that they're flexible together. They share knowledge, they carry memory, they care for weakness, they imagine what lies beyond the ridge. The camp does not vanish all at once, it becomes traces. A ring of stones, a patch of ash, a few discarded flakes, pressed grass where bodies slept, a smear of red on a small stone near the trees, broken stems along the path, warmth fading under morning air. If someone returns, the place may wake again. If no one returns, the land will take it slowly back. Rain will soften the ash, wind will move dust over footprints. Roots will push through old sleeping places. Animals will cross the hollow without knowing whose breath once warmed it. The band begins to walk. You follow for a short while as they climb out of the hollow and into the pale light. The children are drowsy. The adults scan the land. The elder pauses once at the ridge and looks back. Not dramatically, just enough to remember. Then they continue. From the ridge, the world opens, valleys fold into distance, the sky brightens, somewhere beyond sight. Water waits, fruit ripens, stone lies in the earth, and another fire may already be smoking. There are no roads, but there are ways, no maps, but there is memory, no writing. But there are stories moving in breath, no cities, but there is society, no history books, but there is history happening quietly in every step. You stand still as they move farther away. Their figures grow smaller against the morning land. A child turns once, perhaps toward a sound, perhaps toward nothing at all. The shell ornament catches the sun for a single bright instant. Then the group passes beyond a fold in the ground, and the hollow behind you is empty except for ash, stone, and cooling air. And there, in the quiet after they leave, the answer feels very gentle. Humans became truly human not in one thunderous moment, but in many small acts repeated until they became a way of being. A hand taught another hand, a fire was kept alive, food was shared, a child was corrected before touching flame, a body was remembered after death, a path was planned before sunrise, a song, or something like a song, helped the night grow softer. You look once more at the fading camp, and then at the horizon where they have gone. The first truly human moment was not a shout. It was a circle of warmth, and someone making room for someone else beside it. The morning light grows thinner now, softer, as if the ancient world itself is beginning to dissolve back into dream. The hollow lies quiet behind you. The ash is pale. The stones are still warm in their centres, but only faintly, like a memory you can almost touch. Grass bends in the breeze and rises again. Leaves move overhead with the hush of slow breathing. You do not need to follow the band any farther. They are safe enough for this moment. Walking toward water, shade, food, and another night beneath stars. Their voices are beyond hearing now, but you can imagine them easily. A child asking a question, an adult answering with patience, someone laughing softly at a small mistake, someone watching the school, someone carrying fire in memory, if not in hand. And now you can let the distance widen. The ridge grows pale, the trees blur, the old camp becomes only a shape in the mind, then a feeling, then a warmth. All the vastness of history settles into something simple and kind. Before cities, before books, before names carved into stone, there were people who woke in the cold and helped one another meet the day. That is enough to carry with you. So let the fire burn low. Let the smoke lift and fade. Let the ancient footsteps pass beyond the hill. Not lost, only continuing. You are allowed to rest here at the edge of the story, under a sky older than language and gentler than thought. The night around you is calm. The room around you is quiet. And somewhere very far away, 100,000 years ago, a small band of humans walks into morning, carrying the first soft light of who we became. Sweet dreams.